town's designation of water and sewer allocation categories within the town. The code reference for this is 109-19.4. And as a bit of background, the town, per the code, and with a great deal of work from the town engineer and the town staff in total, has to, every 2 years, do a number of things that are called out in the code to define priority areas, available water capacity yield, available sewer capacity yield, and then once those two things are done, then again, we have the last thing to do, and that is where do we want to allocate that available yield, whether it's water or sewer capacity. And so where we are tonight in this journey that I just outlined is we're at the point of designating how much of the available water yield and sewer yield goes into the 13 categories that are called out in the code reference I mentioned at the outset. One of those categories, the number one category, is the priority area. The priority area is, in simple terms, where the planning commission recommends to the council, to the mayor, to the town staff that we should focus future growth over the next 2 years, 2026 and 2027. As I mentioned, we've already done that. We did that at the last planning commission meeting, and we designated the priority area to be approximately the downtown zone plus some extension of Center Street going east toward 27, and I'm sure the commissioners recall that. That was a unanimous vote to have that area designated. That area, for historical perspectives, has been the priority that we have set, and I won't go into the rationale other than to simply put that aim of that priority area is to keep the downtown zone vital, revitalized, growing. A bit of the logic that it's the heartbeat of the town, so let's think of it in terms of being a priority area. So we're past that designation, and now we're into the town engineer doing calculations for available water capacity yield, which, if I recall, is 19,272 gallons per day. And there's also a large number for the available sewer yield, Barney. And so tonight, we're going to talk about and allow the public to talk to us about how that allocation of that 19,272 flows across those 13 categories, right?
Yes.
Okay. So may I first see a show of hands of those who want to comment on that allocation? I see one. Any others? Two? Very good. And I'm not restricting it to these two gentlemen. Certainly after they're done, I'll ask again if anyone wants to come up and make a comment. Because we have two, I'm going to set the timeline, the time limit, for each comment to 3 minutes. We'll keep a timer up here. If I remember to turn it on, it'll designate 3 minutes. We'll ask that you kindly come up to the microphone that's on your left up here, and I believe it's turned on.
Yes.
Okay. And the only last rule I have is just give us your name clearly so we can record it here as part of our required public hearing. And I do not need your address, street, and number. Just please tell me if you're a town resident or not a town resident. Just simply that binary, in the town or out of the town, after you give us your name. And so I'll ask for either of these two gentlemen, if you want to be the vanguard of comments, please come forward. Again, name and are not a town resident.
All right, good evening. I'm Stephen Demoter. I live in the town of Mount Airy. Regarding water capacity yield and water allocation, the Department of Environment states that having an adequate water supply to meet the existing and future water demand in a community is vital for the protection of public health. So in January and February, the council took 2 votes on 2 resolutions on water capacity yield. The one in January set a yield of 63,815 gallons per day. That was found to be in error. It was an inaccurate number. So the town then had an amended resolution in February and arrived at the 19,272 number. On both occasions, I brought up comments that the town did not follow its own code. It did not post the methodology to the town's website, so I had a problem verifying those numbers. Additionally, the Water and Sewer Commission uses a different methodology than the town, so that's an issue. So I tried to rectify this. I went through a thought process, following my guiding principle of applying lessons learned and fostering continuous improvement in government. And with no clarity or guidance available locally on this issue, I did my own research. That led me to going to the Maryland Department of Environment, and I had some conversations and email exchanges with a series of questions, and they replied in writing, and I have those recommendations and requirements in writing. So I want to hit my key comments here. First one is regarding use of point of entry versus a well flow volume, which is the issue at hand. MDE states that using point of entry flow data underestimates the actual water withdrawals and would make the system appear to be using less of its permit than it actually is. Since water appropriation permits are based on withdrawals at the source, using POE data is not an appropriated substitute. So they're saying that's an inappropriate method. So that takes your water capacity yield from 19,272. That takes it down to only 9,668. So the first thing I recommend is we need an amended resolution to take to the town council and get that established before you allocate any water. Okay? I'm running out of time, but I have some very salient comments here. My next issue is, I have them, and I'd like them for the record. Let me make a final comment. I have many, but I'm recommended that you allocate no water during this round. You only have a small amount of water to allocate. It represents 1% of our current water supply. And for many, many reasons, I recommend you allocate no water in 2026. I have detailed comments and some graphics. I have the record of MDE replies, and I'd like that to be made part of the formal record. So I'll provide that.
If you could provide them to John.
I'm Dick Swanson. I'm the chair of the Water and Sewer Commission, and I just want to say that I concur with Councilmember DeMotor in his statement, because MDE has come back in writing and told us that our current method overstates the amount of water that's available. And so there should be a look into revising that. So instead of using point of entry, you would use the well production numbers.
Thank you very much. Are there any further public comments with regard to the water category allocation? Seeing none, I'm going to close the public hearing portion of this evening's agenda on the water allocation categories, and we're going to move right into the Planning Commission meeting. I am now calling to order the monthly Planning Commission meeting of the town of Mount Airy on March 30th. We'll begin with the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And as I always try to do, I want to thank the people who are here tonight who take time out of their evening to join in this civic discussion of events within the town, and also for those that are tuning in on the live stream. Our next order of business will be the approval of the minutes from February 23rd, our prior month's Planning Commission meeting. Each commissioner has been provided a copy of those minutes. I'll pause for you to take a look at those and to refresh any notes you may have. And I'll take a motion whether to accept or not accept the minutes from February 23rd Planning Commission meeting. Commissioner Butts.
Move to accept them.
The motion's made to accept the minutes from February 23rd. Is there a second?
I'll second.
A second is made. Is there any discussion, edits, or amendments to the minutes before you? Commissioner Beta?
My last name is spelled B-I-E-D-A, not B-E-I-D-A. That's it.
Where did
Here.
What page is that on, Brian?
That's page 2.
2? Okay. Deborah, have you got that? Yes, I see it, right about in the middle, right above Adamstown, right? Okay. Thank you. Any further discussion, edits, or amendments on the? Commissioner Butts, would I ask that you amend your motion to accept the minutes with the change made by Commissioner Beta?
Absolutely.
The motion's been made to accept the minutes with the change on page 2 for the correct spelling of Brian Beta. Do I have a second on that revised motion?
I'll second.
The motion's been seconded for the revision, and any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Abstain?
Those opposed? Those abstain, yes. And correct me if I'm wrong, Commissioner Bynek, you were absent. That's why you're
That's correct.
abstaining. Yes, okay. Deborah, we're good? Fantastic, thank you. Our next order of business is citizen comments, as I mentioned at the outset of tonight. I'll again ask for a show of hands. The microphone is in your upper left, as we did during the public hearing. I will ask again that you give us your name and whether you are or are not a citizen of the town. May I see a show of hands of those? I see one. Any others that wish to make citizen comments? Mayor, microphone's yours.
Good evening, Larry Husher, the mayor. So what I wanted to talk about was ordinance 2026-2. First of all, I want to say it's a very well-crafted document, which is what I would expect on it. It's most of these documents are done very thoroughly, so I appreciate Councilmember Demoter and the town attorney for working on it. There's 3 governing documents in a town. You have the charter, you have the code, and then the one that nobody really knows about is a policy book. So this policy book has everything on things like annexations, property acquisition, things like that. So that's what's in there. As I was going through the ordinance, what I saw was the impacts to the PC, to the Planning Commission, and it really breaks down to E in the document that says the Planning Commission shall review the detailed staff report. And then it goes on and explains a little bit more. The majority of this deals with the staff and the reporting. And to kind of give it a broad brush, it calls for better posting prior to any rezonings. It calls for better documentation, which is important in case we get PIAs, that sort of thing. It calls for a better staff reports and better criteria, better record keeping, and then it also seems to have a focus on neighboring properties. Not that it matter with any of that. That's all just fine. So last month, it was brought up that this had come up to the executive branch and that we had talked about creating a policy. Well, the policy is created. We have created one. I'm not showing you this to say that you shouldn't approve the ordinance. As far as the recommendation goes, what I'm showing you is that if everything goes south on the ordinance, we will have a policy that incorporates what is in the ordinance. I'm not saying it shouldn't be in the code. I'm just saying that the ideas in here are really good, and I have them in a policy. So even if this goes in the code book, we're still going to have the policy reflecting most of it. So make your decisions based on your personal feelings. If you make a recommendation for it to be approved, that's great. If you don't, that's fine too. And the council will vote on it. If it ends up in the code, then we'll already be one step ahead because we'll have a policy. Okay? Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor.
Mayor, is there a way to peruse the procedure manual?
Yeah,
Is it,
if you want to come in and take a look at it, that's fine.
okay.
Yeah. Okay, thanks.
And I'm going to bring up some similar questions when we get to
Okay.
that topic. But no, it's a very good question. It's,
I didn't know that existed until just right now.
yeah, no, it's top of mind here also. So we'll get to that.
Okay.
I believe it's the last item on tonight's agenda, if I'm not mistaken. So thank you. Any others wishing to make any citizen comment? Now's the time. Seeing no further interest, I'm going to close the citizen comments section of tonight's agenda and move to our Frederick and Carroll County planners or liaisons reports to this body. And as I mentioned before, these volunteers up here depend a great deal, of course, on the town staff for counsel and advisement, the town attorney. In that same level of partnership, we have our liaisons in the Carroll County and the Frederick County. And I'm very sincere about that partnership because they give us a lot of awareness of things happening around this multi-county town that we occupy and love. And so tonight, I have the great privilege of introducing our new Carroll County liaison, Miss Tiffany Fawcett. Tiffany, if you'll come forward. And if you'll allow me, I'm going to extol your credentials a bit. Tiffany is, she looked at me like, careful. Tiffany is one of the several comprehensive planners that work for Carroll County. And Carroll County's organization is their equivalent of this planning commission at our municipal level. At the county level, it's the planning and land management. And then underneath that is the comprehensive planning division. And within that division, Tiffany is a comprehensive planner. She's got a lot of focus on not only Mount Airy, but Freedom, I believe, and also Finksburg, Sykesville, I think, also.
Sykesville a little bit.
A little bit.
Going to be getting some more insights on that one, but yeah.
So she has a real challenging portfolio of municipalities that she liaises with and helps from the county perspective. She was also a key person in the Finksburg pedestrian and biking plan, I believe, the study. So she has that kind of recreational background also, which, of course, if you've been in this town, we really, really value our parks, our recreational, our trails, and those sorts of things. And so she's also got expertise in being a planner for housing and sustainable communities, if I look at your portfolio. So certainly that's enough for me, but welcome and joining us tonight. Anything that we should know about the high-level activities at the county government?
Absolutely. Maybe more than I'll bring today, but I would be happy to bring you more information if you let me know what you're interested in the future. I'd also like to bring you pretty much everywhere I go to just introduce me, because that was fabulous. Thank you so much, Chairman, and good evening, everyone. At the county level, we do have a few things going on across the county. One is that we do have some vacancies in the comp planning department that have now been filled, a couple of them, which is allowing me to now come here instead of John gratefully giving the reports every month for us. So I appreciate the opportunity to be here. We're also compiling the annual report, as you know, and I want to say thank you for approving that information and signing off on the certification letter last month and getting that to us. We should have a draft of that report, so it's the entire county, including the 8 municipalities, available for review in May. I'll send it through the town, and that can be shared with you. We are, as you know, also working through the master plan. We're reviewing work group recommendations. There were 3 work groups that we went through last year, met for several months to get recommendations. And some of those recommendations are specific to some of the towns. So we probably will be introducing some of that information before definitely before it gets approved, but before it might even be seen on a broader scale, just to get some insight on what you would like to see in that area. So that should be coming soon. We've had a real bump in the increase of the number of plans that have been submitted recently. We had 8 coming through technical review last month. Sometimes we have 1 to 3, so that's the scale of that. But 5 of those were solar plans as well, coming across the county. Those are just an influx now that it's a state regulation to allow them anywhere. We now have that available on ag land, and so they're just an influx of those. However, also a little closer to home here, there is one development that did come through technical review committee last week actually, for property off of it's Britannia Estates. It's right off of Watersville Road between Shadyside and Hampton. It's a 4-lot subdivision just outside the town's growth area to the northeast. And then the priority letter was signed on the 19th by the commissioners, and that did include, it was a little different this year. It was changed and broken down. Yes, it's in order of number, like the road number, but there is also a list of priorities in the front of the letter that are broken down by project type, and those types were, the types were construction, engineering design, concept engineering, and planning studies, and that did include the breakout project for the pedestrian tunnel underpass connecting Watkins Park to the east side of 27 it was number 2 under engineering design. Water sewer, we have not heard back from MDE about the fall amendments yet. Still waiting to hear back on those. And we have received an extension, so the triennial update, I don't know if you're aware yet, will not happen this year. We have an extension, and that will not occur until next year. Hopefully now that we have more planners, we'll be able to meet that expectation. And then looking ahead, Planning and Land Management is working with a consultant to evaluate how the adopted plans and our zoning code and site development regulations match up. And so we might have some zoning code change recommendations coming in from those, and making changes throughout the county based on those recommendations in the future. There's some things coming up, as well as we have the ADU regulations, the legislation that was in effect last year allowing ADUs, accessory dwelling units, on any piece of land that has a single family dwelling on it. And so we'll be looking at those regulations over these next several months as well. And that's everything I have. If you have any questions.
Fantastic. Any questions from the commissioners to Ms. Fawcett? Just to touch again on the priority of transportation projects. And so the widening of 27, which was in the previous priority list, is still going to be there. So I'm just asking for, have I got it right? So it's still going to be there, but we're adding now a design element of the tunnel to that project. Is that accurate?
2 separate from what I understand.
Okay.
But I can look at the letter real quickly, and if you want Frederick to go ahead and go, and I can give you the update right after if you would like. Or we could let.
That's okay. I'll tell you what, we'll just focus on it next time.
Okay.
We'll focus on it next time as to that element, because I think everybody's kind of keen on that aspect of 27. So it's a great thing that you mentioned. Yeah, just tell us if it's a separate project. The tunnel's separate from the road.
It is separate. I do know
Okay.
that. They are separate projects.
Oh,
This is
we're
a
then-
breakout project specifically for the tunnel.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay.
And that was listed as number 2 under the engineering concepts.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay. And my only other comment is, I believe, and John, correct me if I'm wrong, this commission and the town staff are kind of looking to what the county does with regard to the ADU legislation and the code modifications that you do at the county level to kind of inform then whether we want to take on any of our own code changes respective of accessory dwelling units. And so we'll certainly be watching what you develop as far as code amendments for ADUs.
Okay.
It'll flow down to here, so.
The only thing I would add is there's also a moratorium on data centers, right?
Correct.
Is there any other moratoriums they're putting on like hold until they discuss the different?
In the Freedom area, there's 4. There's the planned commercial centers, the ones for the self-storage. However, the self-storage has expired, and they are going to try to extend that for another, I want to say 9 months, but don't quote me on that one, but extend it for several months. And then the retirement communities and the clustered subdivisions.
Okay, thank you.
Gotcha. Thank you very much, Tiffany, and again, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Our Frederick County planner and liaison is Miss Vanessa Moreno. Vanessa, how are you tonight?
I'm good, thank you.
Great. What's going on in Frederick County of interest to us?
All righty. It's nice to see you all tonight. At last month's Planning Commission, I reported that Frederick County received multiple rezoning requests from Potomac Edison for 6 existing substations as part of the county's IW2 process. And I did mention that 2 of the substations are located in the Mount Airy and New Market areas. For some background, many of the substations have been around for decades, with the most recent one constructed in 2013. And these 6 properties are currently zoned agricultural and have been operating as non-conforming uses. So the applicant is seeking to rezone them from GI, general industrial to, or I'm sorry, seeking to rezone them from agricultural to general industrial. And so Frederick County recently held a planning commission meeting on March 18th, and Potomac Edison and their legal representatives were in attendance. They stated that the main reason for pursuing these rezonings is so that their electrical infrastructure can continue to get the improvements and upgrades it needs to continue to supply electricity to all the new development we're seeing in the county, as well as converting these parcels from non-conforming to conforming. They also stated that these rezonings have nothing to do with the MPRP transmission line project, as well as data centers, but they did say explicitly that they have plans to expand the Dobbs station. But there are currently no other plans for development, but there is still some concern that there might be additional parcels that may be expanded. So at our last planning commission meeting, no decision was made. It was more of a public hearing for the IW2 plan we have in progress. But we do expect the planning commission to make a recommendation to our county council on April 15th. And then aside from that, there were no major site plan submissions or major development projects in the Mount Airy or New Market areas for this month.
Fantastic. And are there any questions to Ms. Moreno from the commission? John, I'm going to tip to you with regard to the rezoning of those Potomac Edison plats. I believe you can report that the town did provide input?
We did provide a letter in opposition to that. And I'm not sure if is that the Dobbs property that you talked about? Didn't you say Dobbs, I thought?
Yes, they explicitly did say that Dobbs is going to be expanded.
Which is the one we wrote a letter against, correct?
I believe so, yes.
Yes, I wasn't sure exactly.
Right.
But yeah, but the town did submit a letter to Frederick County in opposition.
Gotcha. So April 15th, you're expecting a decision at that next meeting?
Yes, correct.
Okay, and they'll have our input, of course, to consider.
Yes, we did send Mount Airy's public comment letter directly to the planning commission. So they have it, it's in the record, so.
And because the town of Newmarket is in the county and is in that same general area, I believe, and correct me if I'm wrong, that the town of Newmarket also registered against the rezoning?
Correct. They're also in the process of updating their comprehensive plan. So I think that's something they want to address as a municipality, which is understandable.
Okay, so we're in alignment with Newmarket is kind of the short and sweet of it, right? against those
Yeah.
rezonings.
I do want to double check on the Dobbs property just a little bit before I confirm and say yes. I mean, that's the one you, Mount Airy, wrote against for, so I just want to double check that.
Pretty sure that's the correct one.
Okay.
And that's right on our border, correct?
That's right against Windy Ridge, yep.
Yep, yep, okay. Any other questions? One more? Yep.
Vanessa, just for clarification, on April 15th, is that the council voting on it, or is that a recommendation expected to the council?
Right, so that will be our planning commission meeting, our second planning commission meeting for the month, where they will be giving a recommendation to our county council.
That's not the council vote. That's, okay. I just want to clarify that. Thank you.
Sure.
Great.
All
Thank
right,
you very much,
you.
Vanessa. We'll move on to the next agenda item, which is the introduction and recommendation of the 2024 draft red line water resource element WRE 2024. And to help us through tonight's discussion on this agenda item, we have Miss Brenda Denny. Denny, my apologies. And this isn't Brenda's first time making us smart on this WRE document. I believe, if I'm not mistaken, September 29th, you came here last year and introduced the beginnings of what the WRE would say overall, with a specific focus on our municipality within the WRE. And Barney, I believe also you were engaged in that, because a lot of that, of course, water resource element deals with our water system. And lastly, the WRE, for those that are new to this particular topic, it's a part of the comprehensive master plan development.
That's correct. It's an element of the plan.
Correct. And so it's a very key part. I don't need to overemphasize the importance of managing water within the county. We certainly know it's important to manage within our municipality. So I'll tip to either you, Brenda, or to John, but my last comment is we're here to look at now what has been adjusted on the draft from the 60-day review. By law, the WRE had to go through the municipalities to begin with, which I just described was toward the end of last year. We coordinated with not only the town engineer on the water elements within our town's section, but we also coordinated with the Water and Sewer Commission for their expertise, because they're much more keen on all those topics than the Planning Commission. The reason this is a Planning Commission agenda item is because we're also responsible for comprehensive planning. And as I've already mentioned, the WRE is a part of a comprehensive plan at the county level. So tag you're it comes to the Planning Commission. But I say that only in that we definitely partner with all the people who are really smart on this topic, and I hope we've done that thoroughly. So the red lines have been made from the comments you got from the state and any county that wanted to weigh in. And I understand from your report, only Frederick County weighed in on comments or red lines. Is that accurate?
Yes, and I have it in my presentation.
And I'm going to stop and let you go
You're
with the
giving my whole
presentation.
presentation.
Well, you go for it. Thank you, Brenda.
But I do want to reiterate what you were saying, that this has been a cooperative effort all along. The state law does require that every jurisdiction have a water resources element as one of the elements in your comprehensive plan. And so this has been a cooperative, collaborative effort for the entire time we've been working on it, and it's been a while, with the county and all municipalities. So we have one document, but this one document is everybody's document. So the exclusive of the other municipal systems, this whole document is yours, because it provides all the background that the state requires to be in the plan, in addition to what you have in your section. And with each municipality, we all worked very closely. We walked through the Water Resource Coordination Council as our sort of coordination medium, but then also very closely with all the municipal staff for each town in order to develop what's in here. So it didn't just come from me. So I'll just recap where we've been in the process real quick. So as Chairman Gant was saying, we sent the plan out for 60-day review from November 12th, and which ended roughly around January 15th. And that 60-day review is a state-required review period where the state agencies have 60 days to review and provide comment on the drafts. That also includes neighboring jurisdictions. So all the counties surrounding Carroll County also got copies. So then, at the same time, we had a concurrent public review, so it was available for the public to also review and make comment. The record closed for public comments on February 23rd, which was the very last public hearing that was held. And then all the planning commissions, all 9 held public hearings between January 15th and February 23rd. And then, so the public comment record closed for all public hearings on February 23rd as well. So then, subsequently, I took all the comments and we put together the comment packet, which is what you've received. The comment packet includes the comments that we actually received from the state agencies, as well as the only other comments we received, which were from Frederick County. We received no public comments at all as a result of public hearings or as a result of the open public comment period. So the packet also includes the staff recommendations and the red line pages of the plan that reflect what those recommendations from the staff would look like if they were made in the plan. So there weren't really any substantive comments from the state agencies. So most of it was clarifications or just additional supporting information. The bulk of it was to add relevant information on the relevant planning principles. I don't know if you are familiar, but probably are. The planning visions were changed to the planning principles, and there are 8 of them now, and they're worded a little differently. So we just added a section that talks about the relevant planning principles and how it works with this plan. They asked us to add more information related to equity. That was one of the equity and climate change were the 2 things that the state guidance added from the 2010, what was required to be included in that plan. So we just added some information about equity, added a map that shows where overburdened and underserved communities would be based on the state's information on their online tool. There were some numbers that needed clarification, so we did that. Referenced the climate vulnerability tool, again, under the climate change stuff that they wanted us to add. That's a state tool that's available online. We just referenced it as something that was available. And then there were a few suggested action items that they recommended be included in the countywide strategy section, which that section applies to all 9 jurisdictions. So none of them were anything that controversial or substantive, so we also recommended just going ahead and adding those. And so those are all reflected in the red line pages that you see. The other comments received were from Frederick County. Really the substantive comment, if you want to call it substantive, was to remove the option in the Mount Airy section to connect to the Frederick County water system. So in coordinating with the town staff, the recommendation then became to just retain that action item just to show MDE that it is an option as a future water source. And any of the future water sources have a lot of things that would need to happen in order for them to move forward. And as with all the others like this one, of course, we couldn't move forward without Frederick County concurrence, but at least it shows that it could be an option if at some point in the future Frederick County was amenable to that, or if they had the infrastructure in place. If they don't, it's not going to happen. So, I mean, nothing's in this plan is holding anybody's feet to the fire that they have to do something. So then ultimately there weren't any revisions. There shouldn't be any red line pages from in the Mount Airy section then. So the request tonight then is if you are in agreement and amenable to the staff recommendations, then the request is for the Planning Commission to approve the WRA plan element reflecting the staff recommendations. That would be approving like I said, the entire document, excluding the other individual municipal system sections that are in the overview of municipal systems, and then would be reflecting also the recommendations that were made. So then if you approved it, or once you approve it, then Chairman Gent would sign the Planning Commission approval resolution, and then the plan would be forwarded to the council with a recommendation for adoption. The council would also have to hold a public hearing, which is a change in state law from the last time that we did the 2010 plan. So yes, the town council will be required to hold a public hearing before they can adopt or modify the plan.
Fantastic.
So this is basically what I just said. And then the council, after they hold the public hearing, if they adopt the plan, they would also sign a resolution that adopts the plan, and then it would be done. Now I'm done.
Before I turn to the commissioners for any questions, Barney, anything you wish to add with regard to the red lines? Again, to reiterate, Ms. Dene said there was no specific red line other than that Frederick County thing, which wasn't accepted about interconnectivity with their county water system and ours, so we're going to leave it in there.
Which means there aren't any red line in the Mount Airy
Which means there
section.
is no change, yes, yes.
And I would agree to that.
You would agree?
I would agree to leaving it in there.
Correct.
Just saying with Carroll, with Frederick County concurrence.
Gotcha.
We should show it as an option for future. Things can change, and
Gotcha.
that might be a future option that we might want to pursue, and Frederick County might allow, and,
Fair enough, fair enough.
Yep.
Any other items of note, Barney?
Nope.
Okay. Commissioners, any questions to Brenda with regard to where we are in the red line document? Commissioner Walls?
Why are we leaving that in there if it's not a viable option?
Well, it's not necessarily that it's not a viable option, it's just that Frederick County doesn't really concur with it as a recommendation at this time. And I think the thought was to leave it in because it could be something that could be an option in the future if, something changes at Frederick County, or if other things that are options become not options and it becomes more of a need. So it's really, we're just trying to show the state that there are options, but with all options, there are obstacles and things that would need to be done in order to make it actually happen. And that would be one of them, is getting past concurrence from Frederick County.
Are those caveats in there, that there are obstacles to implementing those options?
I don't know if they're in your section, but I think it's discussed earlier in in one of the general sections.
I think for the sake of completeness, it would be good to have, along with the options, what the challenges are with implementing each one, because it could give people the false sense of hope or, security that those are real options when they, if Frederick is outright not concurring with it, we should probably at least acknowledge that in the plan.
Any other comments or questions? I believe what we have on the wastewater side in the WRE is a capacity, and this is according to a handout you provided earlier, 10,781 gallons per day into the wastewater treatment plant. And I believe in the previous information, I'm just making a statement here, not a question. In the previous information regarding that, that was calculated to roughly 43 dwelling units as far as the capacity of that 10,781 gallons. And so I only mention that if that's still accurate, that it does kind of give you a perspective on how much growth we can sustain of the current wastewater treatment plant and still maintain our 12% buffer. Correct. Gotcha. Okay. So it's not a lot. I mean, it's not a big community when we're talking about those 43. Now, we already have accounted for that 10,000, Barney, in our pipeline of projected and potential growth within the town, correct?
Correct.
Right. So again, I'm just giving a perspective here that it is, at least for this commissioner, it's kind of a wake-up point as to the capacity of our remaining sizing of effluent into our wastewater treatment plant. 43 dwelling units, you know? It's sobering. My only other comment, Brenda, would be if we could turn to page 110 in the red line, where you've added a red line table under 19.2. It is the 2023 build-out demand for municipal systems by watershed. And it shows in that watershed for the south branch of the Patapsco, and so we're talking effluent here, we're talking wastewater. And as folks in here know, we discharge our treated effluent into the south branch of the Patapsco, kind of over behind the community of Nottingham and so forth. And so we're under that South Branch Patapsco with Freedom, and that's Carroll County government portion of Freedom. And we have a number there, 338,215, or 3,388,215 gallons per day. And so, and again, I always try to avoid being portrayed as a gotcha guy. But if we go 2 pages past that table into page 106, if we flip 2 pages over to a table that is not a red line, but it's future wastewater demand by land use, and we look at, I hope I'm not going too fast here. It's the table that is just above bold letters 19.0, current capacity, if you're following along with me. And so if we look now at the Mount Airy total build-out demand, it's 1,119,219, and then 3 above it is the Freedom portion, 2268966. And so we should add those 2 to get that number in that red line chart. We're slightly off is all I'm saying here. And so the summation of those 2 on that page should be 3388185, and the table shows 3388215. Isn't that small? I'm sorry to even mention it, but I know you want the numbers to be accurate and consistent.
Yes, I do.
Okay. So if we have a motion tonight on accepting the red line, I would offer that we consider that very small change just to make sure the numbers jive from that page into the breakout on the table showing future wastewater demand by land use, if that's fair. Those are the only comments I have. I'll ask the commission or I'll ask the town staff beyond Barney. John, do you have any comments for Brenda? Yes, sir. Okay. Councilmember Kelly? No? Okay. So again, our effort tonight is to rule on the red lines that have come back from Carroll County after their 60-day review comments. I have heard a comment with regard to adding some text with regard to the Frederick County connectivity.
Can I make a suggestion on that?
Certainly, Brenda.
That way you know exactly. For that specific option where it says interconnection with Frederick County Water System and purchase agreement to supply approximately 0.85 MGD, if we add, I know, if Mount Airy concurs, something to that effect or that. Sorry, that's what I meant. Yes, with Frederick County concurrence.
Okay. Does that sound fine? Okay. Hearing no further discussion, then I wish to make the following motion. I make the motion to accept, this is going to be rather long, so I'm going to do it slow. I make the motion to accept all red line changes in the draft 2024 WRE with the exceptions of the other municipality sections, because we're not here to rule on the other 7 municipalities within the county. With the exception of one change to the table in section 19.2 to read 3,388,185 gallons per day versus the current number of 3,388,215. That's just slight math difference correction. So I'll say it again. I make the motion to accept all red line changes in the draft 2024 WRE with the exception of the other municipality sections and with the exception of one change to the table in section 19.2, so on and so forth, to read the corrected number. Any questions on that? Do I have a second?
I'll second.
The motion has been seconded. Any further discussion on the motion? Commissioner?
Add the part about Frederick County? Did I miss that?
I will adjust it, thank you. Okay. So it's been seconded. I'm going to adjust my motion, correct? Yeah, yeah. I make the motion to accept all red line changes in the draft 2024 WRE from Carroll County with the exception of the other municipalities and with one change to the table in section 19.2, so on and so forth, and with the additional comments regarding the connectivity to the Frederick water system. Is that sufficient? Okay.
I'll second.
It's been seconded. The revised motion has been seconded. Any further discussion on the motion? Hearing none, all those in favor of the motion say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Any abstain? The motion's been passed. Thank you very much, Brenda.
Thank you very much. Appreciate your time.
The next item on our agenda is the introduction and discussion for possible approval of the allocation of water categories. The designation of water and sewer allocation categories within the town of Mount Airy is governed by Chapter 109, Section 14.A, titled The Water and Sewer Allocations. And this is the agenda topic following the public hearing on that water categories. I turn now to the town staff if you wish to add anything or explain anything. Barney, perhaps you're first.
Sure.
Okay.
So based on Councilman DeMotor's comments and Dick's concurrence with those comments, correction to well flows, what our basis for our the flow that we're using that we do our calculations based on is point of entry versus, and I'm going to explain these. What they're suggesting is that we use the flow meters of the 11 wells that draw water from the ground. And what we've used in the past, which was also MDE approved, is the point of entry where the water leaves the station actually entering the system. The water, and those use different meters. There are 5 meters, one for each station. The difference is that there is one station that has a nitrate removal system. It goes into backwash occasionally, and that water is taken out of the well, goes through backwash, and sent to the drain, back to the sewer. So that water does not make it to the point of entry. So that's what makes up that difference of about 10,000 gallons, or about 1% of our flow. So again, we've got MDE saying, you know, we should use the well meters today. In the past, when we were under a consent agreement, we were okay to use the point of entry flows, and we've calculated for 20 years since then. It's about about 1% difference. It is a marginal amount, but let me go through a few points. Covered 1 and 2. 3, I have written documentation from MDE about that results of well 9. We are asking for an additional appropriation that's part of the available water. It's item number 3 on the 2026-4 ordinance or resolution that states that we're anticipating 34,000 gallons a day. I have MDE that has written documentation saying we have been recommended 34,000 gallons out of the 50,000 that we recommended. That's far above the 10,000 difference that we're talking about in this discrepancy.
And you get to the 29 because we have to allow for the 12% buffer.
Correct. Correct.
Okay.
Still, the 29,000 available would be far
So-
exceeding the 10,000.
0.88 times 34 gives us the 29 number.
Yeah.
Okay.
So the recommendation, whether we, utilize a smaller number or even the second recommendation was to actually close the town's water and basically go into a moratorium because suggesting not to put any water in the categories. That would mean we don't have any water available for anything that changes. If a retail changes to a restaurant, they need more water. We have to calculate for that. If we don't have available water, we can't recommend approval for that. I don't know that the town wants to be in that position to keep a business from expanding or growing or changing hands into a different use. That puts limitations on those owners. So I don't know that you want to do that. You can control what categories you want to put them in. And the next point is I think that covers most of it, but when 34,000 gallons approved, we did put in the recommendation that would be put to reserves. It easily would make up for the 10,000 difference. Not saying that our calculation is incorrect, but in the meantime, we would be able to determine whether we should change our basis to the well meters versus the point of entry meters. But in the meantime, not putting the town in a position where we're getting very close to being in a moratorium, which causes other problems. And we were in that problem back when we entered a consent agreement with MDE, and we might have to do the same if we get to that point. So the recommendation is that you would recommend the numbers based on the way we've already put into this division of categories. The available water was already approved by council, and this is not a discussion of the availability, it's a discussion of the division of the categories. So my recommendation is that you would continue with what you would recommend to the town council.
And I promise the commissioners, I'll turn to you, but on the stream right now, so we have 19,272 as the available water capacity yield for the next 2 years, based on the calculations that you had used for point of entry, right?
Correct. Yes.
Okay. And the council approved that number at their last council meeting.
Correct.
Correct. And now we are in the recommendation stage back to the council as to where their approved number should be allocated across 13 categories.
Yes.
Yes. And if we don't decide that tonight because we question the 19,272, I'm kind of asking a legal question here, Tom, and I'm building this story up here. The council's approved this number based on the calculations as we've just discussed.
Correct.
If this, and we're to provide a recommendation not on that number, we're to provide a recommendation on how that number gets allocated.
That's correct.
But we got public hearing comment as to specifically questioning the number, with a recommendation that it be revisited by the council a second time, but they've already decided. And so my question for council here on behalf of all the commissioners is, we've been given a number approved by council.
That's correct.
And our job per code is now to divide it up in concert with the town engineer's recommendations across 13 categories.
To be more specific, recommend to the town council what that allocation should be.
Gotcha. So I'm inclined to stay the course with 19,272 because, number one, it's council approved.
Right.
And if our recommendation based on that number across these 13 categories is then questioned at the next council meeting, we then defer to the council as to whether they want to change it. And if they wanted to change that 19,272 because of a different calculation algorithm, then it would come back to us again with that new number. Am I tracking?
That could happen, yes. I'd have to look at the exact language of the ordinance, but I believe it reposes in the council the right to either approve your recommendation or change it. I'm sorry, I have it on. You do? Yep.
Okay.
So, in theory, I guess the council could receive your recommendations and then alter its own fundamental decision about what is available, and at the same time, in accordance with that, alter
The calculation,
the division.
the division, okay.
Calculation of the division, I guess. Again, I'd have to look at the ordinance real quick.
Sure.
But my memory is that when it comes back to council, the ordinance says that the council at its April meeting can accept the recommendations or modify them.
And that's another point I wanted to bring out, and that is, the code is specific about when all of this must be done by.
That's correct. It sets forth the meetings at which these are to occur. Now, in fairness, here, of course, one of those meetings, I think, was February or January.
January?
And it got snowed out. So you are, in a sense, sort of a month behind. But you are correct that the ordinance specifically lays out the month's meetings at which various things are to occur, not only at this body, but at the town council. Now, if they don't occur, all I can say is this is not, it's not what the code says.
I'm tracking with you. While I mull over another couple of points, I turn to the commissioners. Any questions about where we are? Barney, you had another ad?
Yeah, just reading, I'm not opening the code, just the notes that Tom had sent us back in January, which I think is from the code. It does say the town council may elect to approve, disapprove, or modify. So they could modify it. It does say if the town council elects to disapprove the planning commission without modifying, the town council may provide to the planning commission a written statement of reasons for disapproval and request that the planning commission reconsider its allocation requirements. So it could do either.
I got you. So Councilmember Kelly, I think that this discussion is kind of mailed to carry into that next discussion. And I like the words modify because that could very well occur with regard to the calculations as to point of entry or outflow. And as I understand it from the town engineer, that delta is only on one well, on only one pumping station.
One station which has 2 wells, yeah.
I gotcha. So again, I'm kind of circling through the public comments and the information that was provided by public comment, the reality that the council has already approved an available water capacity yield number of 19,272, and that because we are time limited to have all this done at the council by April, the council is really looking for us to give them a recommendation on how to divide that 19,272 across 13 categories tonight. And any delay is now going to push us outside of the code requirement for April having all this done. So I'm just stating reality.
Yeah, I was actually just looking to see if the official notes were published from the council meeting, because my notes are a little bit disconnected from that discussion of the resolution, but I don't know if you're looking for my 2 cents. I see both sides. The number could always be changed.
Right.
I guess I would question if the number changes drastically, that could affect the percentages. You might have, if it's a small amount, you might have a large majority going to priority 1, whatever the priority 1 is, right? And so,
I got you.
Yep.
So, no, I appreciate that, and I wasn't trying to put you on the spot. I was trying to say, this conversation may get played back again at the April Town Council meeting as to whether we continue with the 19,272 or whether there's, because of different measurements at different points and maybe different algorithms, there's a different number that has to occur. I'm not advocating that. I'm just saying if that occurs, I believe what I heard from the town attorney was that if you adjust the 19,272 because of that discussion in April, we would not necessarily see that number to reallocate the new number into the 13 categories. Am I correct? And that the council, if they did change the 19,272 based on a different algorithm to another number, April would also then agree to that number and then allocate it amongst themselves, correct?
It could do that.
Right. That's how I was getting to the 13 categories being split out. Because they got to have it all done in April, per the code. So it would be change the number possibly, and the new number now get amongst the council members sliced and diced across the 13. Fair enough? Right. And so we may not see it again. I wouldn't anticipate seeing it again because now we're going to bust the code requirement of April. Excuse me. So anyway.
Could I ask one more question of Tom here?
Oh, absolutely.
On the flip side, if this body doesn't approve these allocations, would it still be on the council to do the allocations in April?
The code says yes. I mean, but it would come without any recommendation for the planning commission, which the code also contemplates. The only addition, do remember though, that the code does anticipate that at an April meeting, one thing the town council could do is reject the allocation and send reasons back to this body as to why it has rejected those recommendations, which itself contemplates a circumstance under which the ultimate decision by the town council as to what there is to divide and how it's divided could, in theory, occur after April.
Okay.
To ask a different way, so if this body approves it based on this number tonight, and then come a week from now, the council gets a different number, just in all possibility, right? If number changes, right, the council could reallocate or send back to the commission during April, correct?
That's correct. Could say, we've changed the number, the total amount of yield. We are rejecting the recommendations because we have determined that there's less available to allocate.
Circumstances.
Hence, town planning commission should work with a new number on recommendation of the town engineer, of course,
And
to divide what's the new number.
And if that path were, if I can just jump in, if that path were followed, then it would be at the end of April that we would then look at that new number for another exercise of category allocation, which would then take then that recommendation into the May town council meeting, and we've busted the code.
Well, with the one exception that I mentioned before, remember the code does contemplate a circumstance where the town council at its April meeting says, we don't agree with the recommendations made by the planning commission. We're sending reasons back to the planning commission. Here's why we've rejected it.
So that removes the time constraint of April.
Well, I don't see how you can.
I agree.
Reconcile. So
okay.
there are circumstances that the code contemplates that you go beyond, the town council goes beyond April to approve something fully and finally. It's not probably the preferred method as set forth in the code, but there you have some language that suggests you can,
Gotcha.
the sky's not going to fall if
I understand.
by April it's not.
So,
It's done.
so what I'm proposing to the rest of my commissioners here is that we stay with the 19,272 calculated by the town engineer and approved by the town council at the last council meeting. We can't adjust that number. It's given to us by the council. And it is a number that was discussed at the council decision with the town engineer. So I believe it's fair that our job right now is to use that number and look to the recommendations from the town engineer on how to divide it across the 13 categories. Is there any differing view on that, where we are? Okay, so with that, and thank you, Tom, and thank you, Councilmember Kelly, on this. We have the recommendation in the staff report. The page is page number 3. We have the 13 categories. I'm not going to read them off, but if you total the number of the gallons per day, they will total to 19,272. You will see as a footnote, the category 11 entitled reserve is 0 gallons per day, but the town engineer has indicated that the possible MDE additional appropriation for well number 9 will be 34K, and that available use has to take into account our buffer. So we take 0.88 of that 34, and that gives us 29,920. Am I doing the math in my head right? Okay. And then if that does occur from MDE for an additional appropriation for well number 9, the recommendation tonight for us to agree to is that it would go into reserve. Whew. Okay. So now, any questions on where we are by any commissioner before we entertain a motion to accept these allocations or not? Any discussions? I have one last question. Bear with me. We don't have a similar allocation of sewer capacity. Sewer capacity is allocated to one category, which is known as new demand. Is that fair, Barney?
So right after the recommendations, the first paragraph, town engineer also recommends that the available sewer capacity yield be distributed equally for the first 19,272 gallons a day. So you would have the exact numbers for sewer, and that the remainder be reserved until additional water capacity is determined. So the remainder would go under reserves of the sewer.
For sewer. Okay.
Because that has a lot more available capacity.
Right. Okay. Hearing no further discussion or questions to the town engineer, is there a motion for the recommended allocation of water and sewer capacity yield for 2026 to 2027, the next 2 years? Did you have a comment?
I'll wait for a discussion.
Okay.
I'll make a motion to accept the numbers for the draft resolution. I think, is that enough for?
The draft resolution is 2026-4, correct? 2026-4.
Thank you for draft resolution 2026-4.
These allocations recommended by you are in that resolution?
That's correct.
Yeah. they're all-
That's that resolution, right? But you're recommending for the division of allocation categories based on that
Right.
2026-4.
Do you want to rephrase or?
Okay, I'll rephrase it then. I would move that we approve or recommend a recommendation for the water and sewer allocations for the draft resolution 2026-24 as written and accepted by the town council. Or 2026-4.
I'll second that. So we're open for discussion. Although I seconded it, I'm going to ask the motioner if they would consider a slight suffix to that, to the motion already made, add on the words, "and for any new water appropriation during 2026 to 2027 be allocated to Category 11 reserves."
I'll accept.
Okay? So a new motion has been made with those added words with regard to any new water appropriation going into Category 11 under reserve. Is there a second to that motion? Commissioner Butts seconds that motion. Is there any discussion? Commissioner Wallace?
Yeah, a couple things. So one is that I'm just curious why we are allocating any water to development in any area when we know that we have a PFAS issue. Why are we not waiting until that's remediated before we allocate water? And so in light of that, and in light of the fact that you have to select an area, my recommendation would be to put it all in reserve.
You want to address that?
Yeah, so the PFAS remediation is not required to be completed today. It's something that we are working towards. We have 2 of the designs complete, the other 2 designs on the way. We have a permit pending for the first 2 stations. We're getting ready to bid that out in the very near future. The town does have developments, redevelopments, new use requests. For instance, there's a restaurant wanting to come in near the Walmart. That's changing from a retail to a restaurant, which requires an additional water appropriation, water allocation. If we zeroed everything out, then we wouldn't have that available water. Just, that's the reasoning for trying to continue, not put everything into a moratorium.
So I'm assuming that legally, the town is not opening itself up to liability by giving people PFAS water?
I'm not going to comment on what it opens itself up to or what its liabilities might be. I would say on the issue of moratorium, however, the law is very clear that, first of all, that's got to be declared probably through a legislative enactment, number one. And the case law does specifically require certain findings to be specifically made. I'm not commenting on whether those conditions do or do not exist. But it's not just a matter of sort of declaring a moratorium and saying no more water or we're going, we're not going to allocate water as the case may be. There's certain requirements that you'd want to make sure are adhered to before that's done, and it's got to be done by the right body.
Any other questions? I have a question, and Tom, in close inspection of 2026-4, I don't see the 13 categories delineated specifically with the gallons per day allocation to each one. So should we have a motion revision that says recommend approval of 2026-4 and the allocation per the staff report?
Well, the resolution contemplates that the recommendations of town staff will be appended to it as Exhibit 1.
Okay.
And hence,
So I don't need to add that detail?
I don't think so.
Okay, good. And as far as the added detail with regard to any possible new water appropriation, is that an unnecessary new detail?
I'm sorry, ask that one again.
So I also suffixed on the motion that we would have any new appropriation of water. If we got more water appropriated, that it would go into the reserve category.
That's fine.
That's fine. Okay, so the motion is good as it stands and seconded. Okay. Any other discussion? I'm just making sure that we give the right recommendation to the council. Okay, so I'll recap. All those in favor of the motion to recommend approval of draft resolution 2026-4 and for any new water appropriation during 2026 to 2027 be allocated to Category 11 reserve, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Nay.
1 nay. Any abstentions? The motion passes with 1 nay. Thank you very much, Barney, and again, Tom, thank you. The next agenda item is the introduction and discussion of the possible approval of the Mount Airy Wellness Center sign application. This is a proposed sign for the business known as the Mount Airy Wellness Center, located at 423 East Ridgeville Boulevard in Mount Airy. Before I turn to John for the staff report on this, do we have a representative of that business or the sign company? Sir, please come on up, and while you're getting settled here, John, if I can turn to you for a quick staff report on this?
Sure, thank you, Ralph. I do apologize, I have nothing to put up on the monitor tonight, but there are packets out in the foyer if anybody wants one. Again, this is a new business. It's a Mount Airy Wellness Center located at 423 East Ridgeville Boulevard, sort of right beside where the Atlantic Bank is. It's down a long corridor, or that portion of the building. The suite frontage is 12 foot 6 inches wide, which would give them the 12.5 square feet total frontage, or total square footage of sign allowance. The applicant did come in with a much larger sign, and we negotiated down to the side that they're presenting today for approval to be in compliance with the code. One of the other items that were changed with the adjusted revised sign is the push-through letters that'll be illuminated underneath the Wellness Center, which is also calculated in the total square footage. And again, staff is recommending approval of this sign.
Fantastic. Thanks, John. And sir, if you could just give us your name and whether you're with the Wellness Center, the business itself, or with the sign company?
My name is Will. It's from Sunny Signs.
Oh, from the sign company?
Yes.
Gotcha. Do we have a representative of the business here by chance?
No.
No, okay. And again, let me make sure I understand, your name, sir, is?
Will.
Will, gotcha. Thank you very much. Will, do you wish to add anything to the staff report regarding your application for these signs?
No, because like before I came, I think my office and John already have several emails and trying to meet your standards and the requirements. So I think this is in the final versions.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. I turn to the commissioners now. Do you have any questions regarding the sign application? You've got the data in front of you. You've got the depiction of the letters that are going to be going on the facade of that building, or in front of your entrance, I should say. Are there any questions to Will on the application?
Go
ahead.
Will, are you putting in the vinyl graphic window treatments as well?
Yes, it's per a business owner's requirement. They want to advertising their businesses.
Okay. So they're advertising on
the windows.
on the sign, on a big sign that's going to be on the top of the building, and then they're having two see-through window graphics on there. Now,
Yes.
what exactly is their business besides, I'm sure it's not just stones and
They
buckets and
doing
things.
massages.
Just massage?
Yes.
Okay.
And those signage, I will say, because again, as I said in the staff report, they're down a long covered corridor from where the actual business sign is. So it's really hard to see exactly the entrance to the building. So it's almost like a wayfinding sign for the front of the store.
And it says, is it okay to have that in the window?
Yes,
that graphical?
yes. And again, a lot of places do that. Dunkin' Donuts did it without approval.
Okay, right, without
To
approval.
cover up
Okay.
all the windows, and they
Yeah.
put a white finish on it that
Okay.
you can't see through.
No questions? No further questions?
It's a great question because I want to clarify here, and I lean on you, John, for not only the history of such sign applications, but, and correct me if I'm wrong, for such window treatments in the window and above the transom that we have here, and any lettering on the entrance door to a business, hours of operation, business logo, graphics, that sort of thing, we do not, and this is the question, we do not include any of those into the calculation of the square footage relative to the frontage of the business.
Typically, no. Again, in certain situations, we might calculate it, depending if it had additional verbiage that was related to that. Because this is no verbiage and just more of a picture, it's not calculated into that.
And so with that exception of those other items, the calculations of the facade lettering up above, and I'm going to use the word portico, I don't know what else to call that, but the awning is 12.4 square feet, and the frontage is 12 and a half feet, so we're inside the code requirement.
Yes, sir.
Gotcha, okay. Any other questions for Will or the town staff on this sign application?
I do.
Sure.
I'm just I'm looking at the graphics, and is it 4 different ones? Because it looks like maybe there's 2 large ones on the doors, and then one on the transom, and then it says the business hours. Where does that go?
So I will say, it's a little deceiving. So what you're seeing here is you're seeing the portico as it would be. So this main sign here is actually in front of the building, and then the glass front is the one that has the 3 pictures, and then the store frontage on their door, which is behind the post that's out by the parking lot. So it's a little deceiving, right? So it looks like it's another whole sign. It's just one sign that's out on the face of the building.
So what's on the actual door?
It looks like on the door itself is just the Mount Airy Wellness in a very small text with their business hours. And then above the transom would be the picture, which is behind the column, as if you were in the parking lot. You wouldn't see the lettering on the door. You wouldn't see the transom picture. You would just see the 2 pictures that are down at hip height.
And are those on windows or?
Yeah, they're mounted, and you can kind of look at the see-through window graphics that they have to the right.
No, I was just wondering where they're at. They're on windows next to it, or?
They're mounted on the windows at the face of the store, which is
Okay.
24 feet back from the edge of the face of
Okay.
the building, down that long
But not on the
portico.
doors. That's just what I want to clarify. They're not on the front doors.
No, just what's on the front door is just the store hours and name.
Gotcha.
This is a very narrow piece of real estate between Sandy Spring Bank and Celebrity, if I'm not mistaken. Yes.
I think so.
Is that
yeah.
correct?
It's not Sandy Spring anymore.
And it is,
Atlantic Bank.
I'm sorry, Atlantic Bank, yes, wrong bank. Commissioner Wallace, you had a question?
Just one question. On these 2 pictures on the windows, is the rest of the window clear?
Yes,
Okay.
it's only partial of the window has graphic.
So it's just a band, essentially, that's on the windows with the graphics?
Yes.
Okay.
Any other questions for town staff or to the applicant's representative? Hearing none, is there a motion with regard to the sign application for the Mount Airy Wellness Center? Please.
I motion to approve the, let's see here, the Wellness Center signage. Do I need to state anything else on this?
That should be good.
Okay.
Yeah. The motion's been made to approve the sign application for the Mount Airy Wellness Center located at 423 East Ridgeville Boulevard, Mount Airy. Is there a second?
I'll second.
It's been seconded by Commissioner Hatley. Any further discussion? No further discussion. All those in favor of the motion to approve the sign, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Unanimous approval. Will, good luck to you.
Thanks so much, and thank you, John. One more question. When can I receive the extra permit?
That will be between you and John. Yeah.
We should get it out to you this week.
Okay, because I still need to go back to county because I need to apply the electrical permit for the
We'll
sign.
try to get that out
Okay,
tomorrow.
thank you.
if at
Thank
all
you so much.
possible. Thank you.
Thank you for your time. Thank you.
The next item on our agenda is introduction and discussion for the possible approval of another sign located at Century Pre-Owned Supercenter. This business location is 402 Century Drive, Mount Airy. And before I turn again to the staff report on this, is there a representative of There's a familiar face.
I was going to say.
While you gentlemen get settled in, I'll have John then give us the facts on this sign application.
Yeah, thank you, Ralph. Again, this is the Century Ford location of Mount Airy, located at 402 Century Drive. We do have the applicant in front of us. Again, they have taken and gotten rid of the Jeep and the Chrysler dealership, and they're looking to expand their used super center for their used cars through the Ford dealership. The application is to replace an existing monument-style sign where the old Chrysler, Dodge, Jeep, Ram sign was existing, as you can see in your portfolio, will be illuminated and double-sided. There's also another channel letter pre-owned supercenter sign that will be on the, I guess, the south-facing elevation that'll be towards Twin Arch Road. Again, these are channel letters that are backlit with LEDs, which is very common for what we have in town. And then the last sign would be a non-illuminated sign, and this would be on the side of the building that faces the Ford dealership. So if you were in the sales floor of this Ford dealership, they could easily direct you to the building and say, it's in that building that says pre-owned superstore. Again, non-illuminated. This is more almost a directional signage or informational sign. So there's sort of almost two different animals. Because again, this is not visible by the road. It's more of a directional sign. And the staff is recommending approval of all signs.
Okay, thank you very much. Your name, gentlemen?
Joe DeGiorgi, managing partner of Century of Mount Airy, and this is Jimmy O'Connor, who is my general sales manager.
Gotcha. And if we ask technical questions about the signs, you're prepared
I'll do my best
to go after it? That sounds fair, sounds fair. So I'll just recap what's before us. Again, the code section that we'll make our decision on is 112-11 within the town code, as always. And I believe, if I'm not mistaken, we're really talking about three signs. We're talking about a monument sign that's illuminated. We're talking about a building sign that is not illuminated. And we're talking about a second building sign that is illuminated.
That's correct.
So we're talking about all three, is that correct?
That's correct. And just so everyone knows, so this building was our Chrysler Dodge Jeep Ram building, which we terminated our franchise agreement the 1st of January. So the monument sign that is pictured here is the existing sign that was there. It's just reskinned. So Chrysler came in and took all of the brand signs down, took the skins off of the monument sign, the bulbs. So the sign is the exact same dimensions as what was there. It's just reskinned and re-illuminated.
Fantastic. Any questions to the applicants? Commissioner Bynum?
Yeah, so I did notice that all the signs came down. Well, will you guys be cleaning the building? Because you can see the outline of all the signs.
It's already done.
Okay,
It's
perfect.
already done, yeah.
I haven't,
Yeah, we had it repainted and, yeah, that was done about 2 weeks ago.
okay, thank you.
Yeah, it was a temperature. We couldn't do it in the beginning because it was too cold for the
Yeah,
exterior painting.
it's been cold.
Yes.
Any other questions?
I've got one.
Commissioner Butts?
I'm curious, what's the motivation for this change? Well, our Ford business is booming, and the Chrysler Dodge Jeep franchise was not, so it was just more of a redirection and just expanding our Ford business and, yeah, focus right there.
Any other questions? I have a question. Joe, it just seems between the monument sign and the signs that are proposed for the buildings, there's different color schemes. There's one with a black background, the monument sign, and then the building signs have a blue background. Is that of any significance? I mean, is there a color theme that?
Well, the blue building letters that are going to be onto the Chrysler dealership tie in with the Ford blue that's on the Ford. Yeah, and the monument sign, the old monument sign, which is in the pictures there, that was red, green,
All sorts.
silver, all sorts of colors, and the black background with the white letters, in my opinion, why I chose it is because I think it's pretty elegant looking. So, and I think it'll look nice sitting out there.
And don't take me wrong, my question isn't because we have some subjectivity here as to what colors we like.
Sure, no, I understand.
It was just curious for me to ask.
Yeah, it kind of ties I mean, before, they were two separate, there's two separate dealerships. So
Right.
the blue lettering kind of ties the two buildings together.
Makes sense.
Because it's now one.
Makes sense. Anything further, commissioners? If there's no further discussion, I'm looking for a motion on this sign application for the monument sign and 2 building signs.
I'll make the motion
Commissioner Beineck?
to approve the proposed as-is for the pre-owned super center Century of Mount Airy.
I'll second.
Seconded by Commissioner Hatley. Again, any discussion on the motion in second? Hearing none. All those in favor of the motion to approve the sign application for pre-owned Century Ford of Mount Airy, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Unanimous approval. Joe?
Thank you all.
Thank you for coming tonight.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you, Joe and Jimmy.
Thank you. And they're installing these tomorrow, so I need my permit. Should I give them my email?
Set in by the weekend.
He took that tip from Will.
Joe does have,
I was
Joe
gonna-
does have a story for
I
us.
was going to bring up something important that I think you all should know about. So this morning, I got an email from the town of Mount Airy, and I'm reading the body of it, and it says, here's your bill for your sign permit that you need to pay for. And I said, well, I figured it's going to have a bill associated with it. So I opened up the invoice, and it was $4,999. And I started looking at the email closer, and so I think somebody is taking your meeting docket and trying to scam people into paying. But the $4,000, they waived the fee for public hearings and meetings, and software and technology was waived, but, so.
So this was malicious email you got?
Yeah, and it was, and I mean, we train all of our employees on that, so I looked at the return address, and it said Town of Mount Airy at USA.com, and so I mean, I knew it wasn't legit, and I called John up, and I said, hey, I know you're helping me out here, but this is a little absorbent.
You don't search down that
Yeah,
address.
he's just trying to make a deal.
Yeah.
It's under $5,000, man.
That's right.
Come back with $3.
That's right. Thank you, guys.
Thank you, Joe. Our next item of discussion is Draft Ordinance 2026-2, which is entitled "The Process and Standards for Reclassification of Property Within the Town." This is also known as rezoning standards, factors, elements, criteria. This is the second Planning Commission meeting to discuss this draft ordinance. It first appeared at our February 23rd Planning Commission. And as I mentioned at February 23rd last month, that per the code, we have 90 days to provide a recommendation to the town council with regarding this draft ordinance or any draft amendment to the code. And so this is our second time. I'll recap very quickly, John, if you don't mind. We had a really good discussion with, let me ask the sponsor to come forward. If Councilmember Demoter would please. And so in that first discussion on February 23rd, we talked about different aspects. The sponsor gave us the rationale behind the need for this draft. He provided us a memo. I hope each of us have had the time since then to go over the memo, which provides a rationale or the background as to the need for this draft ordinance. I believe There have been comments from the commissioners forwarded through John to reach the sponsor. Comments from myself, which included some town council comments. And I think I sent a second tranche of comments on March 14th that were more not changes, but comments as to why are we asking for this and that. Did I miss any commissioner input? Is there any other commissioners that provided input to the sponsor on this draft amendment? Okay. So I'll stop there and ask John, is there any further update as to where we are since our first meeting?
Well, no, again, in your packet were attached also, Councilmember Demoter submitted some additional suggestions. And I also attached the current application that we use typically outside the master plan process for a map amendment, just as an example of what we currently utilize at staff level that wasn't utilized during the master plan.
Okay. And so that's the worksheet?
Yep, that would be the application.
Right. Okay. And I appreciate that because I wasn't quite sure if that was an additional worksheet proposed by the sponsor.
No, that was something that we currently have in place.
That's the as-is right now.
Yep.
On what we have, if someone comes in and says, I want to go from residential to neighborhood professional
Normally outside the master plan.
outside the mass. Okay, all right. Good. And now I turn to the sponsor to say, all I'm doing right now is kind of bringing everybody up to where we are now in this second discussion. Anything you wish to add? Because I believe you'll tell us you did a revision. Is that correct?
We did, yes.
Okay, please.
So, real quick side question to the town planner. When exactly did you create that form that you just waved in your hand? Did you just do that this past month or a year ago?
That was before I started here.
Okay. But to case in point, it really wasn't applied anywhere in the process. I mean,
As I said, this is meant for outside the master plan.
I
process.
understand, but when I did a PIA, I got no records. Okay, thank
That
you.
wasn't part of the,
All right.
part of that.
So yes, you gave us some comments, and I appreciate the comments. We worked very hard on this ordinance. We worked over the weekends. Just a point of fact, you guys made a commitment. I've done everything you've asked of me. You made a commitment at the last meeting that you would get me comments by like March 2nd. And then John would roll them up shortly after. So I figured I'd have a good amount of time to get you a revised version back. You said you needed it by the 19th or the 20th. I didn't get any comments until March 14th. And that's only, I think, Ralph, because I saw you at another event and reminded you, and you provided me comments on like March 14th at 5 o'clock. So in spite of not getting what I was told I would get on the time I would get, we still scurried to, in earnest, put together an updated version, working on the weekend with the town attorney to get this into your packet when you wanted it in your packet. So I want to make note of that. I do want to make I think this is the crux of maybe a comment. It is imperative that this ordinance gets codified and put into the code. This isn't just a record-keeping process. This is setting the requirement set for what the town staff does on a rezoning request, their analysis process with the criteria, then what the planning commission does, then what the town council does. And again, setting the series of criteria, ensuring public input, ensuring the public comments are actually addressed. This is not something that should be in a town policy. What is the most significant thing that impacts our citizens? The most important thing we do as a government, zoning and rezoning of properties. That is the most critical thing that impacts people's quality of life and their property and their value and shifts what a town looks like over time. That does not belong in an internal town policy. That belongs codified so that everybody knows what the requirements are, from property owners to citizens to the developers. It's all out there for them to see, and it gives the public recourse because of their requirements, and they don't see that the process was followed, then they have recourse to challenge that. The mayor, and I will say, I feel it was very disingenuous because we've been asking for a policy and a process. I've been asking for 9 months through a PIA. We didn't get anything. I prepared an ordinance that lays all this out. Suddenly, what shows up in the mail from the Harry Potter owl at midnight? Oh, look, we developed a policy, so you don't really need your ordinance. And I think the comments that the mayor said tell the whole story. He said, nobody knows about these policies, but if you want to come in and look at them, here they are in a binder. Policies can be internally changed at any time. They're not approved by the council. There's no opportunity for public comment or input. There's no legality that that policy is going to be implemented completely in consistency each time. So this notion of an internal town policy, it's just a non-starter. So I hope the citizens that are watching this, if you want the power in your hands, this needs to be codified so that you have rights and you can see the process. If you want the power in the hands of your town hall staff in the basement of town hall with a town policy that's helping to decide what happens with your property, then go ahead and support a policy. But I hope out there the citizens support this as an ordinance and come in and make their voice heard. I have specific points I wanted to be able to help you because you gave me a lot of comments, and the town attorney and I went through all the comments. We accepted the ones that we thought were sensible and good improvements. Case in point, you had some issues with like the wording of standards and factors and criteria. So we did, select one term, criteria, and we made that change. I think you had some issues with adequacy of public facilities and using that kind of a term because you thought that would invoke the APFO process. So we took heart to that, and I just think we changed it to like public infrastructure and things like that. We stayed away from using certain hot button words. We're still basically doing the same thing, but it's not an APFO process. I think you had some heartburn with the words environmental assessment because you were concerned that invoked, removal of contaminants and assessment of hazards and that kind of thing in terms of contaminated property. So we changed that to say, environmental quality, and then we define the elements of that. So those are just some examples. I can give you other comments, I'm happy to answer any questions you have. And lastly, I want to remind you, I think some of the comments you offered last time were, well, this is an overreach. This is an overreach. And I'm struggling to understand how it's an overreach because again, you guys just went through the Warfield property annexation process. You created a document with a series of criteria that you heavily applied and made judgments on. You didn't get outside expertise. You made your own qualitative judgments on. In terms of, because I think part of what we're saying is you need to keep a good record of all the public comments and how you adjudicated them. And someone said, well, we have the planning commission videos, and somebody can just go through and look through those 30 videos, which to me is ridiculous. You didn't do that in your annexation document. You provided a roll-up of every single public comment and described them and then assessed them. So this must be an overreach also, because you didn't just say in here, To look at the record of public comments, go see the last planning commission meetings from these 5 dates. So I really don't see how what I'm asking for is any really more burden than what's already happening. It's codifying the process, the criteria. It's making sure that the citizens' voices are heard and there's a record of how those comments are adjudicated. And it puts everything on a level playing field. Everybody understands what the requirement set is. Last point, I appreciate you giving me the time, but for every one of you sitting up there, and even for me as a council member, okay? Zoning and rezoning, it's kind of a complicated process. I mean, when you enter this, and maybe even now some of you, do you really understand step by step what the process is and who does what? We have done that in like 2.5 pages of text changes. You've got the whole process laid out. So anybody, a common citizen, can go to the code, look at that and say, okay, I see what's going to happen with my request for zoning. I see exactly who's going to do what with it, how it's going to be evaluated, what my opportunities to comment are. It's all right there. Lastly, comment. Had we had this ordinance in place several years ago, I do not believe we would have rezoned the Beck property. My first year on the council, it might have been like my 3rd month, we had to make a decision about rezoning Beck. It was all done legislatively at the council table. There was no discussion about criteria or hazards or public input. There was no analysis done. We didn't have a staff report. We had nothing. We took this little line in the old master plan that said, the Beck property has the potential for mixed-use zoning. Somebody grabbed that, they used that as the justification, and then we got an ordinance at the table to rezone the property. If this ordinance was in place, you would not have had that and some other issues in this town. So I beg you guys, I implore you, look at what this is, and please give a favorable recommendation to put it in the code. I promise this is my last comment. So I was looking at our master plan, our brand new master plan we all worked so hard on. I'm proud of it. I know you guys are. And one of the objectives is pursue recommended rezoning of selected town properties. The implementation step, you want to hear this? Proceed per the code to initiate the rezoning process of council-approved properties. It doesn't say proceed per the internal town policy. It says proceed per the code. And I remember, Ralph, you have that big blue binder sitting in front of you, and at one of the meetings, you held up that book and you said, we're the planning commission and we are charged with following the code, nothing else. This is what we follow. So putting some of this in a town policy, I'm sorry, it's just not acceptable. I mean, if you guys are okay with that, that's fool's folly to me. So, you know, obviously I'm passionate about this. I've worked hard on it. I think it's poppycock that suddenly out of the sky, the executive branch says, look, I got a policy now. Look, you don't need that. I got a policy here. I'm sorry, that's poppycock. And I hope the citizens see that. I hope you see that. So thank you very much. I'm happy to answer specific questions because I think I can answer them. But thank you for giving me the time.
Okay, thank you. Let me address a few points here before I turn to the commissioners, because I usually like to go last. But at your outset, you mentioned the March 2nd date. If I recall, and I regret if you misunderstood, I believe I asked these volunteers to try and get their feedback on the initial draft to John by March 2nd. I regret that you regarded that as a very hard date. You did get feedback on March 14th, which was 2 weeks prior to tonight. That is, I believe from your comments, insufficient time for you to look through those comments thoroughly because you made a point of it. Second point, you mentioned that the criteria that this body labored through 5 months on the Warfield Commission was criteria not called out in the code. That is correct, because this body, through legal counsel, established its own criteria in order to evaluate an annexation. And you know that. You know that. We did not need to follow something in the code. We didn't have to look at the code. We, under legal counsel, established our own criteria for the assessment, and we did that over 5 months. So let me reply to that point, okay? Lastly, I would really, really like the civil discourse on your draft amendment to be absent words such as poppycock from the mayor and those sorts of descriptors of him trying to provide, in his own words, a solution to what you foresee as a problem requiring a code amendment. Now, if I can't make you be civil, Councilmember DeMotor, but I would encourage you to have the better argument if you were, okay? So I'm imploring you, leave the descriptors out as to how people are trying to address this problem that you've put before us. I would no more call your draft ordinance poppycock than any such horrible objective. And I'm sincere about that. These 7 volunteers take time out of their day every month to go through what comes before this body. You're bringing a draft ordinance before this body. Please don't waste our time with trying to adopt adjectives like it's poppycock. And I'll end on that, please, because I'm violating my own rule to not get upset. So let me come back to some questions I have by first turning to the commissioners. Commissioners, do you have any question on the revised 2026-2?
Yes.
Okay,
Yeah.
we'll go to
Actually, I just
Bynum.
wanted to ask Tom about this. So I want to make sure I'm understanding. Policies, ordinances trump policy, correct?
Correct.
Okay. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Commissioner Beta?
I didn't know there was a policy manual for this town
There you go.
until tonight. I'm in agreement that if this is something that you want to inject into the town code, I understand that mission you're on to do so. I feel that we handled the Warfield annexation in a very good way, in a very detailed way. I don't like making decisions about the town's future without the input of its citizens, as we are also citizens of it. So having the citizens be well-informed about the things that we do here in this room is probably one of the most important things to me. And the way that we tell citizens what's going on in this room is via the website, the social media pages, the newspaper, if there's still a newspaper that circulates around that people read. So letters to the adjacent owners of those properties, they get all that information too. So my question for Mr. Breeding is that the 14-day stipulation in letting people know about these public meetings or about these things that are happening, that's happening as part of the procedure the town follows in the big blue binder?
Yeah, I mean, that's a given, like you're saying. So for example, the public hearing, we advertise in both papers, the Frederick newspaper.
And by
Carroll
text
County
message.
Times.
I get
We
the text
also-
messages from the town all the time about
Right,
what's happening.
anything related to that, a public notice.
Okay.
We would send that on Facebook, et cetera. Or if anybody who's registered to receive anything related to planning would also get notifications.
Okay, thank you. And this application for zoning amendment changes, this is available through PIA if possible. So Public Information Act, if somebody were to say, I want to see the zoning amendment application for this particular time frame or anything, that person can get this document. Is that true or false?
Yes.
Okay. So was it requested by you, this particular document, for a particular time period that
We're
you're?
talking about the PIA request I made, and it's probably not going to be constructive to go down that path anymore.
Okay.
I do, Commission Chair, let me know if I have a chance to respond to questions, if you want me to do it per member or.
Well, he's addressing you, you can
I'm
respond.
addressing you. So
Okay,
one thing, I don't dislike this,
Mhm.
okay? That's just one thing.
Yeah.
I'm trying to get up to speed with how the town does its business versus a blue binder policy manual that I have no idea existed until today, and this ordinance.
So,
And like Ms. Binack said, does this trump the policy manual? And you, Mr. McCarron says yes. Okay, great, I'm good.
So may I
I'm good.
respond to a couple of things? So first, and for everybody, especially the chairman, I'm not criticizing what you guys did on the annexation. I think it was great that you pulled together a set of criteria and you went through very thoughtfully through a process and did this. My only point was, look, you did this for the annexation. You created criteria, you went through a process, you documented the process and all the comments. And what I'm saying is, I'm trying to almost kind of model, I mean, you did that here, I applaud that. I'm trying to put that in the code for rezonings. That was my point. Commissioner Beta, I had the same issue about the policies, because I guess when I first became a council member, there were some HR issues, and I looked at the policy binder, and it's like 90%. It's all internal HR policy. I don't recall anything about annexation in that binder. But to your point, I mean, this is a town of 10,000 people, and we shouldn't be making decisions on rezoning by an internal town policy that's sitting in a 3-ring binder on a shelf that nobody knows about, sees, vetted, wasn't reviewed legislatively. I'm sorry, that's nuts to me. And then the last point about you're saying, well, you know, we already asked for public comment. If you look at our two things under procedures, the core requirement, I think, in the land use article is you have to put notice in a newspaper, and it has to be published 14 days in advance. So that's the rock solid requirement.
Right.
The town on its own has decided, well, we do some extra things. We use Facebook, we use social media, we do all these other things. And if you look at the language, the way we wrote this, we said we wanted to actually get it in the code to show that we do these things. It says other forms of notice to the public, though not required, are encouraged, such as posting property, posting notices on the town's website. So that was the point of doing that, to kind of take credit that we're already doing that, but we didn't want to say it's also required, because we're trying to balance what's in the established land use article and the way the state of Maryland does things without, you know, overly coloring something in that manner. And the last comment, this is the importance part of this ordinance regarding public comment.
Is that letter C under the procedures?
If you go under,
Because letter C under the procedures was good.
Yeah, well,
I
go,
like that.
okay, now go under letter D. Okay, there's D, go to D6.
Okay.
And that's where we say, consideration and record of public comment. Consideration and detailed documentation of public comment provided, including from neighboring property owners. Why do we do that? Because that's been one of the faults we've learned is we have people come in and say, I didn't ask for my property to be rezoned, and my neighbors didn't either. But this is the important part, the last language, including the manner in which the public comment was considered. So we're putting in a requirement in that says, you're going to get all these comments. You have to show everybody in the process how you adjudicated those comments so people can see that they were heard. And that's an important part of item number 6.
Is
So
it?
I'll stop there.
Yeah, thank you. I have a
Yes.
follow-up for that. So when we're consideration of record of public comment, and then, let's say you're having a public meeting, there's lots of comments at that meeting, and then the next meeting comes and a property owner didn't come to the first meeting, and all of a sudden they're showing up and being like, hey, my neighbor told me this was this, and they came last week to talk to you, and they wanted the rezoning and I don't. So what's the hierarchy of comments that influences the decision that this body makes?
It's all the
in relation to
comments.
that?
You as a body, well, first of all,
Well, what I'm saying is, do we vote from majority? Does majority rule in that? Or is it that the comments of 3 people overcast the comments of 30? You know, when we're making these decisions, because I think they're important notes for all of us to take in.
and to your point, and that's what I struggle with as a council member. When people come in, you hear 5 people, you don't know if that's the full community. But the answer back would be, you need to consider every comment that you've heard for or against, and you need to layer that into your decision process along with all of the criteria you're going to apply and the whole picture of the analysis. And part of this ordinance sets the requirement that, yes, town staff, town planning staff, they have to go through this process first. It's their job. They're getting paid like $92,000 for the supervisory town planner to look at all the comments, make judgments, apply the criteria, provide a recommendation. And then that gets handed to you as the planning commission. That's your fundamental starting point, because you're volunteers. You're not an expert town planner. And then you consider all that information, plus all the comments, that's part of it. And then you do your action. And then when you're done, you make a recommendation, you document your recommendation. Then that comes to the town council, and we do the same thing. And that process, I think, is clearly laid out. I could walk you through the ordinance, but that's what this does.
That's what I see from,
Yeah.
it lays a process out.
Yeah.
And it could be part of the code as well, so therefore, our other blue book would have some injection into it that, well, could be a plus for the town in its future.
So that's why it should be in the code. I mean, it really
Clap out of
needs to
that
be in
one.
the code.
Any other comments or discussions?
I do, I have.
Commissioner Hadley?
Has anybody seen this policy? I know you said ordinances trump policy. I'm a little concerned that we may be, we want all of this to flow together. And can we attach this to this? So moving forward, anytime anybody makes a zoning request, whether it's inside the master plan or outside the master plan, can we use this? Or is this good enough?
So I could give a comment when you're ready for a
Well, I'm
comment.
not done yet.
Okay.
So I'm a little concerned about stepping on staff's toes because they work very hard. And citizens, I remember citizens coming in and speaking, and then you made the comment about, oh, somebody can just look through 30 videos. That's misinformation. Again, there is a responsibility and due diligence for every homeowner when they are buying a property, that they have to call either the county or the town to find out what is going on with their property. And for the citizens who bought after decisions about zoning had already been made, I'm very shocked that they wouldn't have. I would hope that they would have, because I know town staff would have given them the correct information. And a lot of panic came because they were like, we didn't know this was happening. But if you bought your home after the initial decisions were made, as far as I understand it, the onus was on the citizens to call, at least make the phone call to the town, just to say, hey, what's going on? Have you heard anything? This would have been helpful during the master plan, I think. I know it says it's outside of the master plan, but do we need to review that policy just to make sure that everything flows together? Policy, ordinances, everything matches up together. So include, yeah, so that we're not doing anything that throws more chaos into the grinder of this, what has seemed to have been a lot of chaos.
So policy is just a guide on how
Right.
to conduct business.
What does it say, though? Like, because the mayor thought it was important enough.
Ordinances trump guides
Right.
or trump policy. So why do we care about a policy book when it really doesn't hold up in any court of law or anything? It's a guide to run your business. The ordinance runs your business.
Yeah, I just want to make sure that everything is flowing together. If there is something that would conflict, I just don't want to revisit this if it's going to cause conflict.
So I have a response. So Martina, Commissioner, I appreciate your comment. Let me give my view of, okay. You have a set of requirements, and again, this to me should all be codified in the code. The requirements say what to do. It doesn't always tell you how to do it. You figure out how to do it internally. Requirements say, here's what you have to do. And in terms of that little template there, that worksheet, let me use the example. When we all work collaboratively on I came with an ordinance on setting guidelines for applying for an open space waiver, okay? We worked together and we set the criteria. I called them guidelines because I didn't want to get in the middle of, some rezoning stuff going on. But they were essentially criteria. They were the guidelines. We set the guidelines. Now, Ralph, for the Planning Commission, you developed a worksheet. You developed a scoring sheet for how you apply those requirements and come to as an aid to help you decide how you got to where you got to. That kind of thing, to me, those tools and aids to support how you implement the requirements, that can be in a policy. That can be a series of templates or forms that are filled out to help you implement the requirements. Maybe you want to make a template with all of the evaluation criteria in my ordinance here, and then how you score them, or whether it was pro or against. If you want to develop those tools internally, that makes sense to me. That's the way I've done policy and guidance in my government career. But this sets the requirement set. Those are my comments.
Like this, you would agree to have something like this attached to this as like an exhibit? Or
No, this goes in the code. Something like that is an internal tool to help you.
But again, that sounds like a policy.
No, it's not a policy. Well, it's a procedure internally.
For all the words we're throwing around, I think they all mean the same
Okay,
thing.
you have requirements, and then you have things below that to help you meet the requirements. The requirement set gets codified.
It doesn't say anything in here about a worksheet, right? We didn't
No,
have anything.
we're not getting down to that level of the weeds. We set the criteria and the process and the documentation required. That's what this does.
Because to your point, if it's not in the code, it won't.
I think maybe we're talking past each other. I again say, this is the requirement set. This is the legal basis. For example, why do we want it in the code? Codified public processes allow the community members to understand the criteria and challenge proposals based on whether they comply with the approved criteria. Public accountability. When criteria are in the town code, residents and developers know the rules of the game in advance. Internal procedures can change arbitrarily, limiting public oversight. Formal codified requirements protect against unethical practices, whereas internal uncodified processes may hide ownership interests or encourage favoritism. I don't know whether your internal policy is going to be equally applied or you're going to favor certain parts over another. When the requirements are in the code, it says this is what has to be done and everybody can see it and have recourse if it's not done. That's why requirements in a code are important.
I get, oh, sorry. I'm just saying, I would like a line saying, everybody's flowing along the same thing and they're using the correct documentation for it, because this is outside of town. And then it seems like it could be used for, or outside of master plan, it seems like it could be used for a master plan. I just kind of feel like if we're dotting the i's and crossing the t's, we need to have some line in there saying, please see blah, blah, blah for that.
Yeah, if I may inject, so on this discussion of the form, I think the closest that your current draft comes to addressing that form is in paragraph D delta on page 2 of 5. Comprehensive staff report, Bowlegs 1, you have a comment. The official date the application was submitted. So
It also captures 2, D, 2, D, 3, and the review and analysis, starting at 4, is data with the town planner.
right.
And then 5 is the town planner. And then there's records of public comment. The thing that gets me, though, is number 8, group reclassification analysis. If analysis reveals that neighboring or adjacent properties would benefit from reclassification as a group, the report shall include an evaluation of such. The rationale shall address the benefits to overall land use compatibility, infrastructure efficiency, coordinated development, and community objectives.
Yeah, that's
Want me
very
to-
vague.
want me
and
to-
who
want
would
me to
do
speak to that?
Which was the tip of Main Street.
The group reclassification
That was in
analysis,
the-
it could apply.
It was in the master plan.
It could apply anywhere,
Group
but
reclassification.
let me give you this is what I've seen over the last 5 years being on the council. The previous planning commission, which I think everybody tries to do their best, but the previous planning commission, here's what I saw happen. So we seem very fixated on these compatibility of property borders, or, okay, if this is community commercial, then you better have something next to it that's a buffer. Maybe that should be limited commercial, and then maybe you have neighborhood professional or whatever. What I saw the last planning commission do, they sat there and like 1 or 2 people said, I want community commercial. And then the planning commission didn't just evaluate the merits of turning that property to commercial. They sat there and they said, well, using our graded structure here, I think we should change these guys to community commercial. And then, we're going to have to make the neighbors limited commercial. Then we're going to have to make the next neighborhood professional. Before you know it, the whole street got rezoned. It's, in my view, partially what happened in the early stages of South Main Street. So what this is saying is, this is important, and this is something new kind of that's in this ordinance. It says, whether it be the property owners who maybe come in and say, I want my 4 properties side by side to be rezoned, whatever, or if the planning commission or even the council says, maybe we ought to change these other properties too in a graded way, this says, time out, guys. You can't just evaluate each property individually. You need to look at the impacts of that 4 or 5 set of properties that you're rezoning. What are the impacts to the community on that? What are the impacts to the other neighbors by changing half of the street and rezoning all those properties? And you would apply these same criteria, the same process. But item 8 says, if you're gonna rezone multiple properties, whoever proposes it, you've got to show me that you've analyzed holistically what that's going to do to that street, that neighborhood, that community. And I don't think that was really done very well in the past. That's what that's for.
Yeah, go ahead.
Commissioner O'Malley.
Can I just say, I would challenge your theory right there and the statement you made. That's not what happened with that. And I would say holistically, the Planning Commission did take a look at that. When a majority at the time came forward and wanted commercial, we looked at the whole area.
Okay.
And we looked at the borders, we looked at it, we tend to look at what's next to it,
Yeah.
what the road is, what the future holds, whatever crystal ball we can come up with when we're up here. And that's when you make those decisions. You have to be objective in those. And I would challenge you is that's not what happened. And we actually did sit down, holistically look at the borders, what made sense, and what people were requesting at the time.
And that's fair, but I will just say this.
And I'm not done yet.
Okay.
And I would say that I have no problem coming up with an ordinance that addresses a lot of this stuff. I mean, I think that's fair, that's great. But I think you need to engage your stakeholders better. And I think you're coming about this wrong, and that's why you're getting so much pushback, and there's words being said that shouldn't be said, and a lot of stuff. If you really want to get a good document and ordinance together to address these items, work with the Planning Commission, work with the Director of Planning. What do you want? And then we can work it together. And then we'll clean it up, and then we'll make as perfect a document as we can get for you to present to the council. Instead of just saying, this is what I'm mad about, even though this didn't actually happen, I want you guys to approve this.
And I want to.
And you have 2 days to give us a feedback.
If I may, real quick.
Yeah, just a moment. Just very quick, I think that's very well said, because we did, and specific to the topic of group rezoning, I'll add to Commissioner O'Malley's recap of the effort within the master plan, because the group rezoning was driven by the council's acceptance of the 5 goals under the vision for the next 10 years for this town. That goal being the economic development of the town. The council, the elected members, agreed we needed to have an economic growth element within the vision that we offered to the council, which you adopted. And so the group rezoning effort specific to South Main Stream emanated from now this body trying to achieve the goal that was given to us by the council. And I went through that in the joint working group with you to show what available properties were there for either infill or redevelopment, if you recall. And it came to, there was no property greater than about 1.93 acres, I think, was the top offering to do any economic development. And that's the rationale I gave at the joint working group as to why we were focused on that side of town and in that area adjacent to current robust commercial activity, Chick-fil-A, Ridgeside, et cetera, okay? Shiny Shell and all that. So so I'm trying to make sure that the history is depicted accurately here, okay? Because we were trying to do what the council approved when we set about at the very outset with, here's a vision, do you guys want it? Yes, go with that. Here are the goals that underpin the vision. Do you want these? Yes, go with that. And so the remaining portion of the comprehensive master plan was all driven by that, go forth and make the town look like this in the next 10 years. So I don't want the discussion here to focus on revisionist history. I don't want it to look in the rearview mirror. But I do want to set the record straight that you made it an important point just a moment ago about this group rezoning. And that's how the 20 properties on South Main Street came into the master plan as the best way that this body can think of developing an economic goal for this town's growth.
Not only that, it was the farmer that had the multi-generational family farm that he can't do anything with anymore, and he wanted it zoned as commercial, so maybe someday, he could offload the property that the state has stolen from him from road construction.
And I also want to interject about the family that's next to a traffic circle now. So when you talk about us not looking at things holistically,
They want to
he
do the
was
commercial.
adamant about community commercial, because I said, well, what about neighborhood professional, community commercial? What about limited commercial? We tried to give options, and they were adamant about that, because think about that. They're next to a traffic circle. How would you sell that as a residential neighbor? They're essentially land trapped, and they came in during the process, and they were very much in for, and we did ask for lesser zones from them, community commercial, and you yourself has encouraged us several times, quite loudly, to listen to the citizens. Please listen to the citizens. Well, we did, and then we had public meetings, and there were more public meetings, and then properties changed hands, and for some reason, somebody came in and said, you know, I hate to say this again, revisionist history, but, oh, Commissioner Hatley wants to steal our homes for a medical center, which was absolutely not true. And one call to the town would have rectified that. You literally sign a document, your real estate document saying zones and something else, I can't remember the exact title, where you have to call. And I learned this lesson as a 22-year-old when my boss made me go down to town to find out whether his McMansion would be next to a McDonald's someday. And these citizens did advocate for that, and we tried to find a balance. This was not an easy decision for anybody. It was a very difficult thing to balance.
May
May I respond to?
let me offer this, Councilmember DeMoner. Let me see if I can bring the temperature down by some specific things to consider in possibly continuing to revise this. May I?
May I please respond to the comment?
Let me get my points, and if we have time, I'll open it to you. So let me get in with asking if we could turn to page 2 of 5. Again, referencing paragraph D, delta. And we talk about, this is the work that's to be done by the town staff. Okay, so this is the staff report. It's entitled the Comprehensive Staff Report. And so we talk about the staff report incorporating at minimum the following elements. And so then you go on into the next page to describe 8 elements. And I'm going to say it up front. Maybe it's a taxonomy thing that I'm focused on here. I'll accept that. But the taxonomy of now saying the staff report required by the town in this proposed amendment is going to look at 8 elements. And then within element Bowlegs 5, we now introduce the term criteria. So now we have a second term called criteria. And if we turn the page and we look at paragraph B, Bravo, under 11269, it says, they shall be evaluated according to the criteria below, which now is underneath that 10 criteria. So all I'm suggesting here, and I think you addressed it in your opening in working through this revision about bringing the taxonomy down to kind of a Joe tent peg, keep it simple, allow Ralph to understand it, okay? I'll even self-deprecate to say that. But my point is, in this process and in this flow, you talk about a staff report that focuses on elements. Within the elements itself, you ask under number 5 for there to be consideration of criteria. And the criteria are 10 more things. Can we kind of make it simple? Because if I were on the staff and I said, okay, I got to write a report that considers 5 elements, one of them has 10 extra things, I'm just saying, can we kind of make it easy for staff, planning commission to go through your process?
Yeah. May I respond?
Please, yeah.
So under D, the 1 through 8, those are elements. I mean, we can call them action steps. I'm describing what this is. These are the steps of considering a rezoning application, analyzing it, making a recommendation, and documenting the recommendation, okay? You talk about criteria. I think it's pretty clear. Go to item number 4. This is the first place we say criteria. Item 4 says, review and analysis results. Detailed findings based on consideration of the required evaluation criteria listed in section 11269. So that means you've got to review and analyze this and give me results, and you're going to apply the criteria under 112-69. That's where the criteria are. That tells you what you have to consider. Those are the criteria. And then number 5 says, when you're considering those criteria, you got to say how you address them. Maybe you might want to weight them, maybe you might not. And then the rest of these are the steps after you've considered those criteria and analyzed against those criteria, you're going to make a recommendation. And then you're going to put that in the staff report, and that staff report then gets handed to the Planning Commission. Now, if you look at E, Planning Commission Review, this is a change we made in the updated ordinance. Now it says under E, okay, it says E, you need to look at my updated revision. E says Planning Commission Review. Now, the Planning Commission has to review, see, it says shall review the detailed staff report, conduct a public meeting, document its deliberations and recommendations, and then it says, considering elements D1 and 8 above. Because that's what you guys do. John gives you a staff report or a recommendation. I'm not going to comment about the quality of that, but he does that. He gives it to you.
Just did comment on it.
Okay, he gives it to you. I get it. I apologize.
Stop.
He gives it to you, and then you go through these same steps. That's the point I'm making. You iterate on this. You don't just sit there and take the staff report. You actually consider these things yourself. You toss around criteria, you toss around, changes, and then you arrive at your recommendation. So I think that process is here. I thought it was pretty clear that the criteria are in section 11269, and that's what you go to for your criteria.
Chairman,
So, let me just clarify. So element 4 and element 5, which mention criterias, each of those two elements, which are expected to be in the staff report, each of 4 and 5 have to now be sliced across the 10 criteria.
You need to consider those criteria in 11269. You may consider some of them more so than others. You may say, this doesn't
understand.
apply, and here's why. But yeah, you got to go look at those criteria and show you've considered them.
So of the 8 elements, 4 and 5 now break out into these 10 criteria under 11269.
Well, they don't break out. They say, go to that section and apply those criteria.
Well,
What if we don't do that and we just do the 1 through 8? I mean, it's already adding like another 3 days to John's staff report to even do that.
Because as volunteers, I think you guys are all outstanding. One day, you're all not going to be here. Ralph may not be, he may not be here in a year. So we're going to have new people here. So
Bite your tongue.
it's the town staff that has the planning expertise. That's
and
gonna do
again,
this
I don't
first.
want to get too hung up on the taxonomy of
Yeah.
elements that now are a hierarchy with criteria. I'm just trying to keep it simple
Keep it simple.
and
it's too
understandable
Thought it was, but
as to what all you believe needs to be considered in a rezoning request. And perhaps that's just me as a single commissioner here, but I had to kind of flip pages to understand where parts fit in between elements, criteria, findings. You got rid of factors, I believe. And I believe you also streamlined the word standards out. So there was a winnowing down of the taxonomy, but we have these elements that have a hierarchy over criteria. And again, perhaps it's just me. The KISS principle, just keep it simple is all I'm asking. If, rather than have to go between 4 and 5 Bowlegs D to 11269 to pull in 10 criteria, I'm just saying maybe there's a better way.
so what is your recommendation? To list the criteria here under 4?
No, actually, if I were to say it, I would say the findings of reclassification would end at B1, consistency with the comprehensive plan. Because that's the book that we wrote
Yeah.
about comprehensive planning and master plan if we were looking at the master plan that we all took part in, everyone at this table, and if we're having the town staff do a detailed analysis of that property and what its proposed use is, and if it fits within the lighting, the sounds, the odor, the water, the environmental conditions, the making sure that we're based on race or ethnicity, and then we're looking at public comments and group reclassification, and then we're having a planning commission review after John gets that all together for us. And, you know, John can complete his report 1 to 8, and then he could look at section 11269 and say, okay, does these findings match what our master plan says? Is it in our master plan for this to align with the town's vision or whatever that might be? I'm thinking nothing. You don't want anything to happen. That's kind of why I'm saying, you know, that's what this looks like, is a, you know,
And
a future of nothing for the town.
And before I-
honestly.
yeah.
But yeah, suitability for subject property, sustainable parcel, proposed uses versus its current classification, sure. There's plenty of those.
So a comment on that. Again, this ordinance applies to properties being considered for rezoning during the master plan process and also properties outside the master plan process. The term, I mean, I get what you're saying, Ralph. I can, and I'll turn to Tom on this, but there's a reason why the word findings is used, because under section 112-69, that's language that was already in the code, and that's kind of land use planning kind of language. And, you know, we didn't want to mess with changing that word for different reasons. So I think it's about as clean as it can be, the way it is. And I'll just turn to Tom to talk about why, you know, I think we windowed it down to criteria.
Okay.
And
Before
then
we
we
do
have
that,
findings.
can I just offer?
Yeah.
Can we consider maybe just adding a flow chart into
Oh,
the back of the document? And that might help clarify the process, just like we do for site plan
Yes.
development or concept plans. And may I continue?
Sure.
Thank
Yep.
you. Okay, so the first thing is, and I don't need an answer to this, but I mean, how many rezoning requests do we get per year? Because there's a lot of concern with the amount of burden on the town staff, so I would just think it would be good to put it into perspective for how many requests we actually get versus the amount of work that's required for each. The other comment I had is that I think that this ordinance is good governance and it promotes transparency in town government, and I think we should all be for that. We have had multiple, and I'm not going to name them, but multiple rezonings in this town that have basically been a surprise to much of the members of the town. And, you know, like decisions made in backdoor, you know, meeting or backroom meetings about those rezonings. So there was no transparency. And on the topic of overreach, you know, when we were looking at the South Main properties, to be fair, I don't think that the people who live in those homes were notified while we were having all of the comprehensive master plan discussions. I think they were notified like once the plan was going to be finalized. And I think that, you know, having all those discussions about rezoning someone else's property without them being aware, you know, that could be considered overreach. The other thing is that for the annexation process, you know, we went through a very thorough process. We did that because it's this body. But another group of people might not choose to do something that thorough, whether it's for annexations or for rezonings. The other thing is about policy. So, you know, policies come and go. New leadership can change policies. I work in the government, right? So I see that. And then as far as the citizens calling the town to find out about their properties or what's going on, again, if it's in the middle of discussion and it's not on the record yet, they probably won't know about it. And, you know, I think the council member did submit a PIA. And so if these forms, if this was the policy to use this form, then why weren't they returned in the PIA? So it just goes to show that I think having something codified in an ordinance, that's the way that you ensure consistency and transparency and good governance in the town.
Any other commissioner questions on this? I have more questions, but for the sake of time and for the reality that we have 90 days from February 23rd, let me not let my comments or continued questions on this stop any commissioner at this point from offering a motion with regard to accepting or not accepting or recommending approval, I should say, or disapproval of the draft ordinance 2026-2. So in other words, what I am saying is we still have time to go through another round of this kind of discussion in the April meeting, which I believe would be April 27th. Or is there sufficient resolution of two occurrences of discussing this draft ordinance that there is a commissioner ready to make a motion? I'm being fair here for all those ends of the discussion.
I'm not in favor of making a motion tonight.
Okay.
I would, again, my preference is to work as more of a group to work and resolve this because the back and forth is not working.
Okay. Any other comment with regard to, I'm opening the door. I'm not dictating we will not decide tonight. I am stating we have more time to discuss and reach a resolution. I'm sorry, a recommendation. So I don't hear a motion for tonight's recommendation. So we'll move this discussion of 2026-2 into the April 27th meeting, John, if we can include it on that agenda. I do have some more questions. I am offering that we send those back through you, John, if we do on this revision, and then you get them to Councilmember DeMotor. Okay.
I will do that.
All right. So, so based upon this latest, we're going to be working with this latest redlined version for any comments from any commissioner, and you send those to John. Touching again on your opening that you were pushed for time, given April 27th and us having to have the read-ahead and the public announcement on April 20th, 7 days in advance, which would include, of course, any revision to this version. April 20th, give us a rough ballpark in respect to your schedule as to when you would need to see any further edits from this body.
What is the date you need a revised version?
Generally speaking, April 20th would be 7 days prior to our commission meeting is when we post it and provide the read-aheads to the commissioners. So April 20th would have to be, and I think the latest, John, I don't want to put words in you or Deborah's mouth, but you could take it the morning of the 20th for printing and duplication, but the preference would be
The 17th would be
the
the
17th,
latest.
the Friday before.
Well, really, the 16th, because then it gives me a day to get ready for whatever has to be done on the 20th for delivery.
Understood. So April 17th, and I'm just trying to work backwards, Councilmember DeMotor.
Yeah. Morning of the 17th.
Apparently 2 weeks is not enough time.
Well, I was going to say, so backing up 2 weeks, what would that be? What would the date be? April 3rd?
I believe, 14 from 17.
I'm not sure, okay.
I was going to say, that's this Friday, right? I don't have a calendar in front of me.
I'm trying to work it.
I understand.
I'm trying to work it. And so working that date,
Misstated.
as I did in February, if you have comments on this version, commissioners, try to get them to John by April 3rd.
Well, we might as well make it the 2nd because April 3rd is Good Friday, so.
Okay,
April 2nd.
which is right around the corner, which is Thursday.
3 days away.
Yeah.
Okay.
So,
All right. And if not, then I would I would ask that this discussion inform any possible revisions.
Yes.
Absent some input through John, that this discussion could possibly generate some further changes. And,
Can I make a closing comment?
oh, sure, and then we're going to
So-
move on to
so
final
I-
business.
Steve, I appreciate everybody's comments, and these are sensitive comments. I know you did a thorough job on South Main Street, but that's where a lot of issues came out of this. You say you did a group analysis, and I'll give you that, but something, I'm just saying, stepping back from it, something's not right, because we think we're doing a good job, or a lot of people think you've done a good job, but yet we had a lot of people that were unhappy. So why were people unhappy? And I know, to your point, Ralph, you did come up with a vision for South Main Street. And whatever the council guidance gave you, they gave you. But in the end, the council twice voted against rezoning all those properties on South Main Street. So something was askew there. And I think, I don't want this to be totally centered on South Main Street, and that's my fault. It's much broader than that.
And let's not forget, just to add on, February 3rd, 2025, unanimous approval of that master plan and all those rezonings from the council.
I know, but remember, Ralph, remember what happened, which caused this sticky wicket? The council never got to adjudicate and discuss the rezonings until after the plan was signed. And that's part of what happened there. But I don't want to go there, but let me just close by saying, I hear you, Steve. I'd like to work together on this, but the last meeting, I made this comment. I said, when you guys give comments, and this is what I'm asking now, if you want to just say, fix this, fix that, this is bad, that's bad, question. If that's what you want to give me, okay. But it's more helpful if you say, change the wording in line 3 to say this instead of that, or move section 1 here instead of here. That's the kind of constructive comment that then we can work with, and that's kind of working together, not just throwing comments over the transom and saying, I don't like this. So with that spirit, and based on what I heard tonight, I'm going to go back, I'll work with the town attorney. If somebody wants to float me in a trial balloon, we'll put together a flow chart. And I'm going to try not to make it too engineering-ish. I mean, there's a way you can make a flow chart that's simplistic, but still shows the steps. So that'll be one of my actions. I'm going to develop a flow chart and bring that back as part of the revised ordinance. But I appreciate the feedback. Some of you may not think this belongs in the code, and if that's what you think now, then just take your vote and give an answer. If you're open to putting all this in the code, then let's keep working on it. So thank you.
Okay, we'll pick this up on the agenda for April 27th. John and Deborah, please. And just as a quick aside, I believe we'll also have a second draft amendment, draft ordinance. We'll pick up 2026-1.
Correct.
So for the commissioners, we'll continue with this one, and we'll also pick up the mobile food unit in the April 27th meeting. So John and Martina, we'll need to work and take a close look at what that agenda is going to be, because that's going to be our last bite at the apple, I believe, on both of them. Is that accurate?
That's correct.
So the more time that we can allocate to it, I don't want to drive the town business and applications for important work, but you can understand what I'm saying, John.
We only have so many days between now and then as
You
well.
only have so many days, right? Okay. Let's move on to reports and other business, and there is an item here on new commission business that I'll address. But Councilmember Kelly, a quick council report, please.
Sure. So the council met on March 2nd. Councilman Munder reported that an $850,000 federal grant has been secured for renovation of the Flatiron Building. A purchase and sale agreement was approved for a small section of land on the Mount Airy Apartments property This was necessary in order to add a PFAS remediation facility at Water Pumping Station 2. There was a public hearing for the Warfield annexation. I'm sorry, the Warfield annexation public hearing was scheduled for Wednesday, June 10th, 7 PM here at Town Hall. Lastly, ordinance, so this is regarding the water and sewer rates. Ordinance 2026-3 was passed, adjusting water and sewer rates with scheduled increases of 19% this year, then 13, 5, and 3% beginning fiscal year 2031 and each year thereafter. After this, so with this schedule, we're forecasted to begin building our reserves back up beginning fiscal year 2029, achieving 60% of the forecasted annual expenses at that point. The goal is to have no less than a half year's expenses in reserve with a target of a full year in reserve. So that ordinance was passed after much analysis and debate and forecasting. Town staff did a lot of work over several months, and I think we got something. Well, this is my personal opinion. Well, we got something that will be effective in addressing what needs to be done with water and sewer. So the next council meeting will be this coming Monday, April 6th. Any questions, comments?
Thank you very much. Zoning administrator report, you've provided that to each of us. Any highlights, John, or just take questions?
Nothing new. Nope.
Okay.
Unless anybody has any questions about it.
Are there any questions on the zoning admin report? Okay. Before I get into new business, I'm going to go to the very bottom line bullet there, and that is, before I forget, due to Memorial Day falling on the date that we would normally have our commission meeting in May, that date is now going to be May 18th. So we're going to move it up a week, which is typically what we do every year. We advance it. So for the month of May, just please make a note. It is May 18th versus the 25th, which is Memorial Day.
Is that going to be at 7:30?
We're about to go into talking about that.
Okay.
All right. So under new business, three quick things that I wanted to put before the commissioners. The first thing is I want to make sure that everybody has got a hard copy of the Planning Commission rules and procedures. That's a document that I believe John has provided at least once, if not twice, I believe, and 3 times?
No, twice.
Twice, okay. And so I encourage, when you've got nothing to do, to go through the rules and procedures and take a look at certain sections in there. Everything from voting if there's a tie to a very sensitive topic, ex parte communications. And what happens if you find yourself in an ex parte communication, the actions that you are required to make as self-announcement and self-recusal from any topics associated with that communications. And so these are all important things that when we signed up and were appointed and confirmed by the council that we agreed to. So again, I just simply want to make sure everybody's aware of the rules and procedures of this. Secondly, I sent out some information regarding the use of phones during the commission meetings, and I cited some historical events that have occurred, namely in the town of Sykesville with regard to the use of phones during an active commission meeting. And so I'm encouraging everybody, do not provide an optic that you're using your phone in any communication. If that communication is occurring with another elected official or another commissioner, then you have to understand you're violating the Open Meetings Act, which is all communications have to be made public on the topic at hand. So this is not Ralph Gint's rule. This is simply trying to make sure that we don't create the optic where somebody could suddenly walk in the next day after a commission meeting and thrust a PIA in front of you to divulge everything that you were doing on your phone during the commission discussion of ABC, okay? And they would be well within their rights to do that because of what they observed. So whether it's a benign use of your phone or whatever, I just encourage you, please don't use your phones and create that optic that then would just bring a PIA on you, possibly bring a PIA on you. And lastly, I've gotten feedback from two commissioners that as much as we try to do the town's business one day a month within 3 hours, that taking our meetings to 10:30 is really much too late for volunteers who have homework, home life balance issues. And so this very last topic under new business is to make a motion. I'll look for a second, and then we'll have a discussion about it. And that motion is that we change the start time of our commission meetings to 7 o'clock. I'm not going to change the 3 hours required for us to do the town's business because frankly, in the years that I've been on this commission, 3 hours is even pushing it sometimes for us to get everything done. Sign applications, ordinance amendments, water allocation, you all understand. I suppose we could have a discussion about abbreviating that period to something less, like 2.5 hours or 2 hours, but I'm not so sure we can conduct the town's business that we're asked to do in a shorter time than 3 hours. Now, it's fair to say sometimes we get out of here early, and sometimes we're pushing it. Our current agenda is 7:30 to 10:30 with a caveat on the agenda published to the public that all matters that go beyond 10:30, we push to the next agenda. I have in the past, when we get around 10:30, which we got 4 minutes away, I have asked, does anybody want to continue or do we go ahead and push it? And I got to kind of get everybody's sentiment, so I'm kind of, democratic here on whether everybody wants to stay. So with all that said, and in consideration of the 10:30 ending that is uncomfortable for a couple of folks, I am making the motion to change the commission start time to 7 p.m. and we set our agenda end at 10 p.m. and any matters not completely addressed or voted upon by 10 p.m. will be carried over to the next meeting. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Commissioner Butts seconds that. Now we're in discussion. Is there any discussion about changing it to 7 p.m. instead of 7:30? Anybody?
I'm fine with it if it's, you guys okay with that?
3 thumbs up?
No discussion?
No? Discussion?
Okay.
Do they need to, do they discuss?
Do you have?
Do you guys have any discussion for 7?
No.
Okay, not hearing any discussion. All those in favor of the motion to start at 7 and extend our period to 10 p.m. beginning in April, on April 27th, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed?
Nay.
Those abstaining? Okay, so the motion passes that will begin in April 27th and thereon, a start time for the commission at 7 p.m. Yes.
Chairman Gant, before we conclude this, I would like to read something out loud. So I would like to first thank Mayor Hushhour for your confidence in appointing me to serve the Planning Commission over the past several years. It has been a privilege to serve the town of Mount Airy and contribute to a broader vision of our community. With that said, please accept this letter as a formal resignation of the Planning Commission effective immediately. This will be my final meeting as a voting commissioner. Unfortunately, I feel the current environment within the Planning Commission has become increasingly difficult and is no longer aligning with my personal values and ethical standards. Over the past several months, there have been multiple situations that I believe are a conflict with the principles we committed to uphold as members of this body. With that said, I wish everybody I wish the commission and the town leadership the best moving forward. and hope my concerns that are outlined in here, which I'm not going to address with anybody, I have letters that I will give to certain members, be taken into consideration.
Thank you. It is 10:29. This meeting is adjourned. The next meeting will be 7 PM on April 27th. Thank you.
Mhm.